Good afternoon. So glad to have you all here in the wonderful city of Fresno. So we will start with roll call.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Bradshaw. Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Falcone. Commissioner Grisby.
Present.
Vice Chair Guardino. Commissioner Lugo. Commissioner Liu.
Here.
Commissioner Martinez.
Present.
Commissioner Norton.
Present.
Commissioner Tavaloni.
Here.
Chair Eager.
Here.
Senator Newman. Assemblymember Friedman. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Doug. And would you like to give instructions now?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome to the May 2022 CTC meeting in fabulous Fresno. For those participating online, please note that because this is a two-day meeting, you will need to use a separate link to attend the meeting tomorrow. The links can be found on the first page of the meeting agenda. Please use the questions tab on the webinar if you have questions about this. The meeting agenda is located under the handouts tab and on our website at www.catc.ca.gov. Live closed captioning you can see on the screen, and American Sign Language you can see on the screen. Live closed captioning translation is provided for the webinar. You can access the closed captioning services through links found on the Commission meetings page. Any document the CTC creates can be translated into any language you need. Simply email us at ctc@catc.ca.gov and we will have them returned to you as quickly as possible. For our presenters, if you're on the agenda to make a presentation, please do your best to be succinct. Please also remember to speak at a steady pace to allow our translating services adequate time for accurate translations. If you are presenting remotely, we hope that you will turn on your camera during your presentation, if you have one. For the members of the public, we welcome comments from the public as part of each item at this meeting. For those attending in person, please submit a speaker slip to the clerk at the front of the room, that's me, to let us know you want to comment on an item. For those attending via GoToWebinar, you should see the webinar control panel, likely located on the right-hand side of your screen. There you will find the raised hand feature as well as the questions tab. We encourage you to use the raise hand feature as early into the item as you can to give the system time to acknowledge you. Alternately, you may use the questions tab to submit your comment. Please be sure to include the agenda item you are commenting on. Commission staff will read the comment on your behalf. As a reminder, each registered attendee is provided a unique link and phone number to access the webinar. These should not be shared with other participants as they are registered to your specific name and can create confusion for staff when making comments. For all of our meeting attendees, please do your best to be concise with your comments. Please make sure that your comments add new information. If you agree with the comments of a previous speaker, simply make that statement. Please remember to speak at a steady pace to allow our translating services adequate time for accurate translations. Since we often have many speakers, we ask that you make your point in 3 minutes or less. If for some reason we have many speakers on a single topic, we reserve the right to limit comments to 1 minute if needed. You will see a timer on your screen when your comments begin, showing you how much time you have left. Thank you for joining us today. We know that your time is valuable, and we appreciate you sharing some of it with us. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Doug. And I especially like that you said, welcome to fabulous Fresno. I appreciate that. So at this time, it's my honor to introduce the fabulous Fresno Mayor, Mayor Dyer.
I like that. I love that actually. But thank you everyone for choosing Fresno to host your board meeting. And Leanne, thank you for bringing them here to our wonderful city and showing some of the things that we have to offer, including our transportation. You know, a little bit about me. I grew up in this area. 40 years I spent in the Fresno Police Department, and the last 18 as a police chief prior to becoming the mayor. So I know about the importance of transportation, and I understand what congestion can do in terms of traffic and delayed response time for our emergency personnel. So all that we can do collectively is very much appreciated. Fresno is the 5th largest city in the state, California. Population about 550,000. We have 120 square miles within the city, so that's a lot of roads to traverse. And unlike Northern and Southern California, where there is an exodus of the population, either going to other parts of our country or to other parts of our state, Fresno is enjoying a significant influx of people, especially from the Bay Area, Northern California, and Sacramento. That's the good news. And what was titled in the LA Times, Fresno having the hottest real estate market in the nation. That's good. It shows people want to live here. The bad news is it has driven our housing cost up and created a significant housing crisis here. But it's also created a lot of traffic congestion, especially on our, not just on our interior roads, but on our freeways. Specifically when we get to areas like Shaw 99, the interchange, as well as 99 and North, it creates a significant delay there. And those interchanges were built in the 1950s. So we definitely need work there. Fresno is centrally located. We have a lot of land, very available and affordable, which makes it very ripe since we are centrally located for distribution centers. And with that brings in a lot of trucking industry and environmental concerns and CEQA issues. And but it does bring jobs to this region, which is much needed since we are #2 in poverty in the state of California. So those are much needed jobs. And I do want to take this time to say thank you to all of you for your support in funding a number of projects here locally. One of them you visited today with Veterans Boulevard, which is slated to be opened at the end of 23, a $48 million project, as well as the widening of the freeway to a 6-lane in the southern Madera County. That is very important to us, as well as the widening of the 41 freeway, which is oftentimes known as a death trap because of the number of people that are being killed, unfortunately. And so what you do is you save lives by the work that you do and the fact that you are reducing that congestion. You've got to visit our high-speed rail in Fresno, and got to see that we're going to have the first high-speed rail station in the nation right here in downtown Fresno, which is great because that will be a game changer for us and will allow us to create definitely some green tech jobs here in Fresno and put us 50 minutes away from San Jose. But it has created a lot of issues for us in terms of shutting down our downtown and Chinatown for the last 8+ years. And so high-speed rail, in my opinion, cannot come fast enough. But I do look for the outcome. So just let me say in closing, thank you for taking the time to come to our beautiful city. And I hope you enjoy your stay here and you accomplish much in your meeting. Thank you. God bless you all.
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, our tour today, they were very excited when we toured Veterans Boulevard. And there's those of us in the room here that have been advocating for veterans for so long. Getting to the top of that structure and looking over and seeing what the possibilities are, that was perfection. So thank you for having your staff out there to meet us. We appreciated that. Yes, please.
There we are. Mayor Dyer, if you wouldn't mind, sir, first, thank you for your lifetime of service to the citizens in and around Fresno. It's admirable. Second, I've been blessed with a 22-year friendship with one of your colleagues of the big city mayors, San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo. He speaks so highly of you and on a frequent basis that he doesn't even give anyone a chance for a rebuttal when he's speaking so highly.
Well, that's good. I paid him well.
But I just wanted to let you know that and to Also ask if there is one thing that you would like to see, bless you, Douglas, like to see from your California Transportation Commission to help expedite improvements that your residents desire, what would that be?
I think I mentioned two of them is the 99 Shaw interchange. That is something that we are in desperate need of, as well as work at the north and 99 near our industrial area. Improvements there in terms of the interchange and street widening and all that goes with it. Those two projects not only will reduce congestion in both of those areas, especially what you got to see over there in the large amount of housing development west of 99. That's only the beginning. We have thousands and thousands of units being planned. And then the other one is certainly the industrial development that we have in the southern part of our city at North and 99.
North and 99. Sir, if you're joining us for dinner this evening, let's talk further about your priorities.
I would love to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Dyer, you look very comfortable on that side of the dais,
Yes.
but I assume you spend most of your time over on this side of the dais. And I'd just like to thank you on behalf of the commission for making this wonderful council chambers available for us today.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys.
And next, we have a short presentation from Tony Boren and Mike Leonardo.
Good afternoon, everyone. Tony Bourne, Executive Director of Fresno Council of Governments. Mike couldn't be with us today. He was with us on the tour this morning, but we have a Measure C, which is our have some sales tax that we're trying to get reauthorized. So there was a conflict. So I'm here pinch hitting for him. So I want to welcome you to our region, but really what I'm here to do is to thank you for the role that you've played in allowing us to obtain funding for our State Route 41 South project. This was the 6-lane project, the 6-mile project that Mayor Dyer was referring to. Right, so we had basically a 4-lane divided expressway that narrowed down to a 2-lane expressway as we got near the King County line. And again, 41 South is what the route that takes everybody from the valley to the Central Coast, where a lot of us recreate. So what had happened is it had become a real safety issue. Lives were being lost, and so fortunately, through everyone working together, and I really think the outcome of this represents the very best of government. How it can work when it works together, can work very well. So we have a video here that we want to show you that it basically expresses our thank you for the role that you played in that. Thank you very much. you, everyone.
Oh, man, now I'm going to cry. Sorry. So thank you, Tony, for sharing that. I think sometimes we forget about the actions that we take and how they affect people's lives on a daily basis. So thank you so much for reminding us the reason that we're all here. Thank you. So Steve, I hate to bring you up after that, but now I'd like to introduce Steve Brandau from Fresno County Board of Supervisors.
Thank you, Leanne. Good afternoon, everybody. And you're right, it is hard to follow that. So on behalf of Fresno County, I'd like to say welcome back to fabulous Fresno. The last time that the CTC convened in our community, I sat in one of these chairs, and now I work down the street for the County of Fresno. In my supervisor district, I serve in one of the 2 truly urban districts, and we have 3 rural districts. And so I serve North Fresno and the city of Clovis, part of the city of Clovis. And inside of my district includes 3 of the state highway systems that you oversee, 99, 41, and 168. And I travel at least 2 of those systems every day. But about an hour, just over an hour ago, I was in an unincorporated city down south, about 45 minutes away, and that's why I'm wearing boots and jeans today. We had a dedication, or we had a groundbreaking for 8 affordable housing units in an unincorporated community of about 3,100 people. And so I say that to illustrate Fresno County is really unique. It's a mix of urban and rural lifestyles, all of which use the freeway systems for multiple things, whether it's getting to work in rush hour in the city of Fresno like I do, to getting agricultural goods to market like rural Fresno County. There's a lot of challenges there. We have over 6,000 square miles in our county. It's just amazing to think about the size of that. And so we heavily rely upon the highway system that you make decisions about. And so we really appreciate all the hard work. I also would like to thank you for having Leanne Eager, my friend, serve as your chair. I don't know, Leanne, how long you will serve there, but we appreciate that. Even that we appreciate, because that's an acknowledgement of our part of the state of California. She's a crazy hard worker. You probably already know that by now. And she is working with Fresno County to do a study that would potentially bring a life-improving, a community-wide improvement of an industrial park just south of the city of Fresno. Last week, Leanne introduced me to a business owner that has a vision of an inland port. And he hasn't even fulfilled that yet, but he is already taking over 800 truck trips per week off of our road system, and by transferring them to rail. So there's a lot of work to be done in our valley. We thank you. Mr. Gardino, a minute ago, you asked the mayor if he had one thing that he could ask of the CTC. And he talked about an interchange. It's very important. If you were to ask me that same question, I'll be so bold. Maybe you weren't going to ask me, but I would like to be so bold to say is, when you consider the Central Valley and when you consider Fresno County, remember to stay flexible in how you view our community, because it is so much different from other parts of the state of California. So I would appreciate that. Thank you very much for coming to Fresno today.
Thank you, Supervisor. Do we have any other questions for our guests? Okay, well, thank you. And again, we want to welcome everyone to City and County of Fresno. And now we will move to approval of commission meeting minutes.
Motion to approve Martinez?
Second, Norton.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. And now we will move to approval of minutes for April 7th.
Move approval, Lou.
Second, Tavoloni.
Joe,
Joe and Joe.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Doug, Commissioner meetings for compensation?
Now my mic's on. Thank you, Chair. So the meetings for compensation, so we do have a pink item on that. I made a mistake and left a few of them off. So the pink item is now up for your approval. We recommend your approval.
Motion to approve Martinez?
Do I have a second?
Second, Grisby.
Doug, it's a pretty, it's a fairly thick document in the pink item. Any substantive changes or you just want?
So there was one commissioner, I managed to leave some of his items off there. There's a note at the header of that pink item that shows you who that commissioner was and which month.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now we will move on to our illustrious Executive Director, Mitch Weiss.
Why, thank you. Thank you for that very kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here in Fresno today for our commission meeting. I'd like to start off by thanking the organizers of our project tours this morning. These tours are a critical part of our commission meetings because they really help us see the local and regional transportation challenges and the opportunities firsthand. I really appreciated seeing the progress being made on high-speed rail, which is all of you know down here, more than 100 miles under construction, already benefiting the economy here, and which will really bring transformative changes, not just to the Central Valley, but to California as a whole. It was a lot of impressive work going on in other areas, and it was great to be able to see that firsthand. I just want to acknowledge we have a new commissioner who was unable to attend today, Commissioner Lugo. She had a prior commitment, and I expect that she'll be joining us at our June meeting. I also want to acknowledge and say thank you to former Commissioner Inman for her service. You know, her work on the commission for many years, particularly in the area of freight and goods movement, has been a tremendous help, not just for us at the commission, but for the people of California. Commissioners, on our agenda today for this meeting, we have almost $900 million in allocation requests that together will create nearly 10,000 jobs. We also have a few policy matters to continue our work enhancing climate and equity considerations in our programs. First, we have draft guidelines for the State Highway Operation and Protection Program, which, as you know, is our largest funding program and by law must be spent on repairing and maintaining the state highway system. Our proposed guidelines call for Caltrans to incorporate strategies from the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure and from the department's equity statement. In addition, the draft guidelines include new language to ensure the information in the program documents is more transparent and easily understandable for stakeholders and the public in an effort to increase our public engagement. There's also on our agenda an update to our equity work streams. We're continuing along with the equity listening sessions, and we'll hear feedback today from the two initial sessions that we've held in recent weeks in partnership with Caltrans and CalSTA. Our next listening session will be held virtually on June 8th. We also just completed our equity advisory roundtable process and are getting closer to establishing our interagency equity advisory committee. I want to acknowledge our roundtable members for their time and tremendous contributions, as well as the significant staff efforts of Sequoia Erasmus on our team, Amar Sid from Caltrans, and Avital Brandau from CalSTA. I also want to recognize that Sequoia, Amar, and Avital, along with Carolyn Abrams from Caltrans and Renee Rainey from ICF Consulting, will be jointly presenting on our equity work at the WTS annual conference in Seattle on a panel entitled Equity Statements in Motion, Findings from the 2022 California Transportation Equity Listening Sessions. This is a great opportunity for those staff to showcase our efforts and illustrates our transportation equity work here in California, and that work is becoming a model for other states in the nation. Budget and funding issues are also an important part of our policy matters on our agenda today. I've had several conversations with the administration leading up to the May revision on transportation infrastructure's proposal. I'm very excited to report that the additional $500 million in active transportation program is included in the mayor vision, which brings the total proposed augmentation to $1 billion. I think this shows that our messaging over the last year on the need for funds for this program to help clear the backlog has paid off. And the governor's proposal will now go to the legislature, where we've also been doing a lot of outreach over the last year to bring awareness to the dire funding shortfall we have for active transportation across the state, as well as our transit needs. We appreciate the governor's proposal, but would certainly welcome additional investments for active transportation and other programs as well. And we'll be discussing this in more detail in tab 14. Later today, we'll also hear an informational item on the implementation of the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, as the work group process to implement this act appears to be nearing some initial discussions. One of the issues that staff has been focusing on with respect to federal funds is ensuring that California is well positioned to compete for competitive federal funds. To that end, we're recommending today under tab 21 that the commission adopt 2 projects early for the 2022 Trade Corridor Enhancement Program. This will help those projects compete for federal funding in the federal infra program because that program rates projects more highly if state funds are committed to them. Advancing programming like this is just one example of the flexibility we hope to provide to our partners to ensure that we can meet state objectives and be very competitive for federal funding. This is something that's been allowed in past guidelines, but this is the first time that we're utilizing this. Also regarding the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, I want to highlight some themes from our SB1 program guidelines updates and reflect on how well they align with the multiple federal funding opportunities that are becoming available. Ultimately, we envision that projects that are competitive through our SB1 programs will also be competitive through federal funding programs. Some of the common themes included in the federal bill and in our SB1 programs are to fund projects that promote and improve safety for all road users, particularly vulnerable users, make streets and other transportation facilities accessible to all users, address environmental impacts, prioritize infrastructure that is less vulnerable and more resilient to a changing climate, future-proof our transportation infrastructure by accommodating new and emerging technologies, and reconnecting communities and reflect the inclusion of disadvantaged and underserved and other underrepresented groups in the planning, project selection, and design process. Equitable outcomes have been a central goal of the SB1 guidelines development this cycle, and the team has included new evaluation criteria and commonly used indicators and resources to promote more equitable outcomes in project selection. Additionally, zero emission infrastructure has been emphasized as a means to promote sustainability. Guidelines will now ask for applicants to consider how their projects are dealing with climate change resiliency and adaptation. And lastly, safely, air quality, and greenhouse gas emissions and accessibility have always been key evaluation criteria in our SB1 programs. In this cycle, we further honed our guidance on performance metrics to better demonstrate the outcomes of funded projects over time. The SB1 programming team have finished their guideline development workshops and are now finalizing their drafts for the June commission meeting, which is when we'll hear more about the process and the updates to the guidelines. Our active transportation program team also continues to focus on how we track and measure the benefits of our investments for that program. We have 2 agenda items related to this on our agenda. First, our active transportation team, which consists of Lori Waters, Beverly Newman-Burkhardt, and Alika Chengizi, have been working to quantify the air quality and greenhouse gas emissions benefits of the program's investments, and they prepared an informational presentation for you. Second, they're bringing forward for your approval a new policy on reporting counts of bicyclists and pedestrians. This will help in assessing the program's impact on Californians across the state. I also want to recognize Caltrans' Active Transportation Resource Center, which is funded by the Commission. They've been selected as a top 3 finalists for the California Transportation Foundation's Public Outreach Award. The center provides resources, tools, training, and technical assistance to active transportation stakeholders across California. Commissioners, as you know, Hannah Walter our Trade Corridor Enhancement Program Manager has been working on ways to improve the state's ability to guide freight investments. In recognition of her expertise in this area, Hannah has been selected as a panelist for the Transportation Research Board's June conference in Washington, D.C. on investing in transportation resilience. I'm very pleased that Hannah's getting this national recognition for her hard work and also showing how California is leading in this area. To end my report, I want to note a few staffing changes and other milestones. First, Christine Gordon has accepted a promotion to Assistant Deputy Director of Administration for the Division of Financial Assistance at the State Water Resources Control Board. Her last day with the commission will be this Friday. She's been a key member of our programming team. We're very sorry to see her go. She has really been a consensus builder, a team player. I've really enjoyed working with her. I will definitely miss her, but we wish her the best and totally understand why she is taking this promotional opportunity. Penny Davis, our retired annuitant legal consultant, has decided that she really wants to be retired and not work part-time, and so she will be leaving the commission at the end of this month. We've done interviews and hope to bring on another retired annuitant very shortly, but in the interim, we continue to utilize the Attorney General's office to assist with legal matters. I'd like to let you know that Leanne Day1 recently joined the Local Streets and Roads programming team as a program analyst. She came from the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. She's originally from the Clovis area, and she moved to Sacramento, where she received her bachelor's degree in history, making her the first college graduate in her family. Don Chesser has returned to the commission as a retired annuitant and will be supporting the programming team. Don has worked in transportation for over 15 years with both Caltrans and the commission. Don retired from the commission as the deputy director of programming. And during her tenure with the commission, she was instrumental in establishing the foundation for the first cycle of our Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, as well as the SB1 accountability and transparency guidelines. 2 weeks ago was Public Service Recognition Week. Chair Eager and I each thanked our staff for the service to the state of California and the important work that they do and the benefits that they provide and make possible for the public. In addition, 5 CTC staff who have over 25 years service with the state received a certificate and a small gift. These 5 staff members are Zilan Chen, Christine Gordon, Jose Oseguera, Teresa Favila, and myself. Finally, that's been a long report. I want to note that many staff are participating in May is Bike Month again this year. We have a competition among staff to encourage participation. We won't know the results for a couple of weeks, but we do have some photos to share. And I haven't seen these yet. So we've got Lori Waters with some groceries in their basket on a shopping trip. Beverly Newman Burkhardt and some friends taking a break while on a ride, and also taking her election ballot to City Hall. And the last one has the challenges staff must complete, such as riding 10 miles in one day, teaching someone to ride a bike, and learning to change a flat tire. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch. Whew. Anybody have any questions for Mitch? No, we're good. No, I guess we're good. I don't think there was anything in there we needed to vote on. Am I correct? Okay, we're going to move on then. We will move on to commissioners' reports, and Mitch did say a lot of the things that I was going to say, so mine's going to be very short. I was going to congratulate those folks who did meet those milestones. So congratulations to all of you. Hope you got my video that I sent. Oh, good. So it has been a very busy time since we saw each other last. We were in Tulare County at the town hall meeting last month, where we had a short meeting, but then we got to tour the great county of Tulare County and saw all the wonderful things that they were doing there. We have been meeting regularly with the governor's office and with CalSTA in looking at where we're going from here, moving forward, ensuring that the people of the state of California transportation needs will be met, and that we're being responsible with the money going forward. So we'll continue to do that. We've been meeting with a lot of our partners, whether it's with the climate control or with the equity groups, because one of the things that we have always said here at the CTC is we can't do it alone. It takes all of our partners working together to do the work that we need to do. So we have continued to do that. We also wanted to acknowledge the Caltrans fallen workers month, I think it was, and many of us did attend. Oh, I'm gonna cry again. Oh my gosh, it's one of those days, I guess, right? Excuse me. So we attended the Workers' Memorial across the state of California. I know there was a, sorry, thank you, a very large one in Sacramento. I attended the one in Fresno, and I have to say for myself, it was overwhelming to see all of those orange cones that represented the fallen workers. But certainly on behalf of all of us, and I know there are others that would like to speak on that issue, we wanted to make sure that the people of the state of California, and specifically the Caltrans workers, knew that when we talk about safety up here, we're not just talking about people who are driving on those roads. We are committed to working on safety for those Caltrans workers, those people who are putting their lives in danger by working on our roads. And so we wanted to make sure that we thanked them. And I know Commissioner Norton, you also wanted to say something?
I did. I just wanted to thank my colleagues, Commissioner Liu and Commissioner Martinez, for going with me to the Caltrans District 7 Fallen Worker Memorial event. It was led beautifully by Caltrans District 7 Director Tony Tavares, who shared with us his own harrowing experience of a near-death experience that would have happened if his Caltrans workers hadn't repaired a guardrail. And every single worker that talked about and read out the names of people who had passed had also talked about either near misses or, in one case, a collision that while he's healed physically, he was very clear about how scary it was to not heal mentally. And this was on a road that I live right by, and a car plowed into their truck going 100 miles an hour with a child in the background on Route 2, which is near where I live. And that happens, I see that happening all the time. And so it just was extremely moving that every single worker had a story to talk about how dangerous this work is, how committed they are, but how they really, really are urging everyone to be vigilant and stay off your phones, to look at how you're driving, and just the concern about how fast people are driving on the roads and how unwilling people are to put their phones and other distractions down, and what that could do to really imperil people's lives was incredibly moving. And I just wanted to thank District 7 for a really moving tribute and a very important set of safety precautions for all of us. And I didn't know if Commissioner Liu or Commissioner Martinez, you wanted to add anything, but it was wonderful to be asked to be there and really to hear from the families. And it will always stick with me. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Norton. Anyone else want to speak? Okay, Commissioner Liu.
Doug, I don't know if you put the picture in here that I sent. I wanted to thank Caltrans for their efforts to turn over their own fleet of vehicles and equipment. They have a very large fleet, and they're working to find near zero emission solutions to that. And I got to spend May 10th with 3 of the top Caltrans people working on this, Deputy Director Corey Benz, Deputy Director of Maintenance Operations, Bob Myers, who came with me a few months ago to do this too at a conference. He's Division Director of Environment, and Sergio Sivas, who's also a Division Director, Chief of Maintenance. And we spent the day at a Advanced Clean Technology Expo conference looking at heavy duty, medium duty solutions to their problems, and even light duty in terms of things like the new pickup trucks, zero emission pickup trucks that Caltrans needs to buy about 2,000 of those. I wish they were available. But I wanted to congratulate Caltrans for doing this. It's a monumental task. It's a necessary task, and it's actually an overdue task. But the delays in doing this has actually allowed the technology to evolve some. So I'm looking forward to getting those clean vehicles in our most polluted air basins in California. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Commissioner Liu. And I was wiping my eyes, but it wasn't about that. So there was the one thing I'm not crying about there. Commissioner Martinez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I would just want to acknowledge you and your leadership, and I'm very happy that we're here in Fresno. You know, when you come from an urban city, you know, you tend not to think about the Central Valley only when you're thinking about produce and farmers. And so when you actually get to drive, and so it's been twice that we've been over here as a commission. And so driving from Long Beach or Los Angeles to here has been an amazing experience. And I just wanted to highlight that it really has not surprised me, but has brought in light of the importance of the Central Valley, that a lot of times folks in Southern California and even Northern California don't give credit to the Central Valley for the amazing tenacity and an amazing work ethic that you all have with very little resources. You all could accomplish so much with very few dollars in comparison to Southern California and parts of the Bay Area and also Northern California. So I wanted to acknowledge that because I think it's important as we continue to travel through the state of California that we recognize the regions that we're in. California can be you know, various states. If we had a choice between Southern, Northern, and Central, essentially we could be 3 states, and they're very different. But sometimes our policies are a one size fits all. And then specifically as it pertains to transportation infrastructure, housing infrastructure, and I think you all take very seriously water issues. And I think throughout the state of California, we're all talking about water. And at the end of the day, all these policies, they're all interconnected. And so how they're impacting you here in the Central Valley, whether it's transportation, housing, or water issues, as we move forward, as our governor and the state legislature is moving towards ensuring that we have ambitious goals with CalSTA, that as we look at our food systems, a lot of the food that's being produced here in the Central Valley is essentially being exported, right? So when you look at our localized food systems, you know, it's very tied to land use. So everything that we're talking about has a lot of local control. And so here we are in the city of Fresno, they control land use and zoning. And so what I saw, you know, last month and this month when we were in Tulare County, and then obviously here, is that the synergy and partnerships that you all have. And I also wanted to recognize that. And then secondly, I wanted to also acknowledge Commissioner Norton. She was awarded last month as well, and Commissioner Liu and myself attended LA Walks for her support and her continued support as it pertains to active transportation in the LA region. We had a great time. I participated in the walk, and then we went to the festivities later on where we caught up with Commissioner Liu. But just really understanding that all of us that are up here, you know, obviously this is not our full-time job. And so we're out throughout the state still touring and trying to learn from different entities. But what's important is to recognize that the commissioners up here are very passionate And it's not just, some people say, oh, Michelle Martinez is the bike person. No, I'm not a bike person. Do I ride 250 miles typically a week? Yes, but that does not make me a full supporter of just bikes and active transportation.
That's definitely a bike person.
Yeah, so I understand. And that's why I didn't submit pictures, because I was like 10 miles, that's nothing. Do that in my sleep. So, but I know 10 miles.
Before you're impressed, it's a Harley that she does that.
Yes, thanks. And so just let me conclude by just, as we are acknowledging National Bike Month, wanting to thank the staff for being involved and engaged at the CTC, because the amount of work that we're doing in regards to equity and active transportation, we have to practice what we preach. And so I really appreciate, and seeing the pictures and seeing you all being active is really special. I don't take transit a lot because it's very difficult in the LA region to do so, specifically from Long Beach and or Orange County when I'm there to trying to get to Los Angeles. But what I can say, the opportunities that I get to walk and bike throughout communities within the state of California, when you're actually out there walking or biking, you actually get to see some of the infrastructure that we support and that we fund. And what I will say is that and today, and I wanted to acknowledge Diana from Caltrans, you are leaving an amazing legacy. I'm not saying that you're retiring anytime soon, Diana, but let me just share with you, you are an amazing human being. But the work that you're doing, not just with active transportation, with the rail authority when you were there, and obviously here with Caltrans, and connecting those dots and really putting people first. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that. I know I asked bike questions today, specifically active transportation, but your creativity and your innovation to ensuring that people have access to those facilities are imperative, specifically here in Fresno. So thank you so very much for your commitment.
Thank you, Commissioner Martinez. And yes, we'd all like to congratulate you. Commissioner Norton, if everybody could congratulate her, we would appreciate it. Well deserved, well deserved. Do any other commissioners have a report? Yes, Commissioner Falcone.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to go back very briefly on the remembrance of the fallen workers. So I wanted to acknowledge the very special and very memorable event in Imperial Valley that was organized by Gustavo Dyer in District 11. I wasn't, unfortunately, not able to physically be there. I haven't figured out how to clone myself to be in 2 places at once, but I was there. I participated virtually, and I think one of the most meaningful and poignant parts of that event was listening to how proud workers and contractors for Caltrans are of the work that they do on behalf of all of us in California, and how very connected they are with their fellow workers and contractors. So there's a collegialness, if that's a word, but that was shared by those that spoke at the event. I think one of the most meaningful and I got really choked up was the reciting of each and every name of workers that lost their lives in service of our state, all of them since the turn of the century. So I just wanted to acknowledge that wonderful event, and that I'm glad that it was done in Imperial Valley. I would like to be there physically next time. Yes, and I'm glad that we do this each and every year. I think it's really important that we do so. Also, I wanted to congratulate, I was teasing Christine Gordon of her promotion, leaving us at CTC. She's leaving transportation for water conveyance and water supply. That is very brave. But she doesn't do easy, clearly. And so I want to wish her luck and appreciate the work that you're gonna do for for ensuring that we all have a reliable and high quality water supply. So thanks, Christine. And congratulations, Commissioner Norton, on your very well-deserved recognition I want to be like you someday. Seriously. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any others? Then I do have to say, Commissioner Martinez, I wholeheartedly agree that Diana Gomez is our gem of the Valley. We have known each other since early high-speed rail days, and people always called us the dynamic duo of transportation because we worked on high-speed rail together, and then I came first to the CTC, and then she went to Caltrans. And people said, "Oh gosh, did you do that on purpose? Did you do that together?" And we said yes. As a matter of fact, we did because we know, or I know, the amazing work that Diana does and can do in the future. And so you cannot steal her. I know I saw that in your eyes that you were looking at. You cannot steal her. We're keeping her here. So if no one else has anything, we will move on then to CalSTA Undersecretary Elisa Canova.
Good afternoon, Chair Eager. Thank you. Good afternoon to all the commissioners and participants today. I am sorry that I'm not able to join you today in person in Fresno, but thank you for the opportunity to participate remotely on behalf of Secretary Omashawkin, who is traveling out of state. As you know, Chair Eager, Secretary Omashawkin was recently in the Central Valley to see the progress of high-speed rail construction, and he was pleased to tour the Selma Training Center with you. He looks forward to returning to the Central Valley soon. I will start my report today by noting that last week the governor updated his January budget proposal with the May revision. The May revision continues the governor's budget commitment to move to a multimodal, zero-emission transportation future that delivers climate and health benefits and creates a foundation for the development of sustainable communities. In addition to the sizable investments proposed in 2021 and the governor's budget, the May revision reflects the funding proposed as part of the early broad-based relief package that was released in March. Included is an additional $500 million for the active transportation program, which has been mentioned, and that brings the total to a proposed $1 billion. And this funding is included in the now $9.6 billion transportation infrastructure package. The May revision also includes $750 million in incentive grants to transit and rail agencies to provide free transit for Californians for 3 months, which was part of the early broad-based relief package. This proposal would also provide a one-time refund of $400 to each eligible owner of a registered vehicle. This broad-based refund would return an estimated $11.5 billion back to taxpayers. In addition, the relief package includes a 12-month pause effective October 1, 2022 on the general fund portion of the sales tax rate on diesel fuel. This proposal is to continue making transfers from the general fund to the public transportation account as if the full amount of the tax were being collected, so there would be no impact on transportation funding. The May revision also includes positions and resources for Caltrans to administer and implement the state and local transportation funding provided by the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or IIJA, and to provide engineering and design support associated with the increased project workload. Speaking of the IIJA, I'd like to provide a brief update on CalSTA's implementation efforts. First, we're tracking some significant federal funding opportunities with upcoming deadlines. I'm sure many are aware that there is an active notice for multimodal project discretionary grants, which combines the infra, mega, and rural programs. The deadline to apply for these grants is next week on May 23rd. Caltrans is working on several applications on behalf of the state and also providing letters of support to our local partners for their applications. Also, we're expecting the Bridge Investment Program funding notice to be published in the coming weeks. CalSTA is coordinating with the Federal Highway Administration to host a webinar on the Bridge Investment Program. CalSTA wants to position California to compete effectively for these and other discretionary funds to address the state's need for bridge and other funding. I'm also pleased to report that Caltrans has achieved a consensus agreement on a state and local funding split of federally apportioned IIJA funding. The agreement allows for the traditional funding allocation that provides 60% of federally apportioned funds to the state and 40% to local agencies. Caltrans presented the agreement to the CalSTA IIJA working group last week, and we're in the process of posting a summary to our website. I would like to thank the Caltrans team and Budget Chief Keith Duncan for their diligent work with stakeholders to reach this agreement. And finally, I want to note that we are still waiting on the federal policy guidance for some of the IIJA programs. And this guidance is necessary to fully understand the programs and make key implementation decisions. So we'll be extending our working group schedule and meeting every 6 weeks through the summer to give our federal partners more time to publish guidance. And our sub-working groups will continue meeting as necessary to develop their IIJA implementation action plan. I want to thank all of our partners statewide for their continued participation and contributions to our implementation efforts. Finally, Madam Chair, I'll close by noting what has been said by CalSTA leadership at previous meetings, but I think is worth repeating. With the transportation infrastructure investments being proposed by Governor Newsom, coupled with the IIJA, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to transform California's transportation system into one that is safe, equitable, and sustainable, but only if they are the right investments. With historic levels of transportation funding coming our way, it is critical that we make every decision with equity top of mind. Later in the meeting, you will hear an update about the Equity Advisory Roundtable and the statewide equity listening session. We are also working closely with CTC and Caltrans to continue equity outreach efforts through the development of a Transportation Equity Advisory Committee. Born out of CalSTA, we intend for the Equity Advisory Committee to elevate diverse and historically marginalized voices to advise our organizations on how to achieve meaningful transportation equity and environmental justice outcomes. We will be hearing more about this later and at a future CTC meeting, so I'll leave further details for that time. With that, Madam Chair, I conclude my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Undersecretary. We look forward to working with you in the future. And next we will have Acting Director Stephen Keck.
Thank you, Chair Eager. Before I begin, though, I would like to say thank you to the Commission for your recognition and support of our 189 fallen workers at Caltrans. When I led the Workers' Memorial in Sacramento, I said as part of my my remarks that leading that ceremony was the most important thing I can do as Acting Director. To be really honest about it, it was the hardest thing I've done as Acting Director, and there's been a few hard days in this job. In particular, Commissioner Falcone, thank you for recognizing Caltrans Pride. It is a very, very real thing, and we maybe haven't communicated it as well, but it's actually one of our values that Caltrans updated with our new strategic plan, because sometimes you think pride is a bad thing, but it is not. Pridefulness certainly is, but we can be proud of the work that we do, and the work that our workers do is really phenomenal. So, but thank you very much for recognizing that. With my regular remarks, if we could just go ahead and move to the second slide, I want to, oh, thank you. I have my own control now. Ooh, that's nice. So this month's employee highlight at Caltrans, we are highlighting Jeremy Villegas, who is a supervising land surveyor, currently acting as Office Chief of Surveys in Central Region, that's Districts 5 and 10. Jeremy is a second generation Caltrans employee, and his father worked for Caltrans as a safety officer. So his father recognized that Jeremy was very interested in math when he was very young, at 9 years old. And his father began to bring home transportation surveyor exam questions for him to work on, even at the age of 9. And he was very much into it. Unfortunately, his father passed away when Jeremy was still a child. But before he died, he asked his Caltrans family to look after his son, to let him know if there was any way that he could join up with Caltrans. And in 1991, they let Jeremy know that, hey, we're doing the junior engineering technician exams for the first time since the 1970s. And Jeremy studied very, very hard, 3 months straight, was able to pass that exam and get on with District 5 surveys as a jet in 1991. He worked his way up the ladder. He took and passed the land surveyor in training, which is the first step towards becoming a licensed surveyor, which he did become a licensed surveyor in 2001. Just 10 years after that self-start at really what is the entry level at Caltrans. He's actually now currently hiring new jets into surveying roles, which is something he really likes to do, bringing people on the same path that he followed. He's really a true success story, a real self-starter, very dedicated to the work that he does, and he's become really an inspiration to those he's hired on to fill the surveying ranks. So, Jeremy, if you're watching today, we know your father would be proud of you, and we at Caltrans are too. Thank you very much for all of your work. Next, just a few very quick updates on personnel changes at the highest levels at Caltrans. First, I think last meeting we had let it known that Mike Beauchamp is retiring here very soon. Diane Morales is stepping up to take over for him in an acting capacity as Director of District 8. She's been working for Caltrans since, well, for 22 years now. And most recently was the Deputy District Director for Program Project Management since 2019. Also, Angel Pyle, who we all know as SB1 Program Manager, has stepped up to replace me as Chief Financial Officer for hopefully not much longer, but she's doing an excellent job acting in that capacity too. And then very briefly, we never did mention or highlight Adnan Mahia, who is acting as, or actually not active, but he is the Caltrans Clean California Program Coordinator, and he was appointed way back in September of last year. Dyer Wheeler has stepped up to act as the Division Chief over Aeronautics. She's doing that in addition to her role as Chief of Dry SI. And Keith Steiner is stepping up to head the Division of Human Resources for a short period of time while the incumbent is on leave. Last month I spoke about our new director's policy on the safe systems approach, which really commits us to a bold vision of 0 deaths by 2050. And today I wanted to give you a little bit more information on how we're going to go about that path to success. It's really going to hinge on 2 solid plans moving forward. One is an objective-based plan, an objectively based plan called the Road Safety Action Plan, and the other is a quantitative-based plan called the District Traffic Safety Plan. So the safe system leads that I spoke about last time, in each district and each division, they're going to be responsible for developing with their districts the Road Safety Action Plan. And the Road Safety Action Plan is really that qualitative plan that's going to look at our practices, our policies, looking at what we do, our processes within Caltrans, what we can do to be more safety focused. But the quantitative plan is that traffic safety plan. And that plan will be identifying actual locations on the state highway system, identifying projects to fix these prospective hotspots, and systemic-based safety projects. So one is more of what can we do to be better as Caltrans? The other is what can we do project-wise to increase safety on the highway system? Both of these plans are being kicked off. Those efforts will be kicked off this spring. The first will be completed by the end of this year and the other in 2023. For our climate update, wanted to talk a little bit about the new carbon reduction program authorized by the IIJA. This program is going to bring approximately $107 million per year for the next 5 years to Caltrans, or to the state, I should say. Federal Highway Administration very recently issued guidance for this program, and that program really is going to allow for broad funding of strategies to address carbon emissions here in California. So we're actively already working with stakeholder working groups that Undersecretary Canove mentioned earlier, and that includes representation from regional transit authorities, transportation advocates, the legislature in California, the CTC, MPOs, RTPAs, and others to determine how we can leverage those funds along with other state and federal funds to maximize carbon reduction benefits to the state. So that's really a collaborative process that's ongoing now. For our equity update that we do every time, this time I have some really good news to celebrate. And so normally when I talk about equity, I'm talking about things we need to do that we're doing to get better. We don't usually want to tout our own success because we're not done. We have a lot more to do. But this time I'm going to make an exception for that because we were recognized pretty well at the Department of General Services State Agency Recognition Awards, which were held last month. We received 2 awards, which is a record for Caltrans for this group. And these are recognizing departments in their dealings with small business and disabled veteran business enterprises. So we received the Green Award at the gold level for agencies that meet all of our small business goals and prove our commitment to environmentally preferable purchasing. In other words, we're meeting our green goals and we're meeting our small business goals at the same time, which is a excellent balancing act. The other one we received is Agency of the Year, which was awarded to us for demonstrating our commitment to the success and outreach efforts, performance measures, and other notable improvements in dealing with small businesses and DVBE enterprises. So very prestigious awards, especially that Agency of the Year. And I want to salute the collective efforts of all those who've been working on these, especially David DeLuz and David Prismich and their teams for bringing home these awards from the Department of General Services. And for our project update, here we go. For our project update this cycle, I wanted to talk a little bit about Clean California, which is a $1.1 billion effort to clean up and beautify the state's transportation system. Since July of 2021, so this fiscal year, we've collected 616,000 cubic yards of litter on our state highway system. That's enough to fill, this is almost too big to make sense, 188 Olympic-sized swimming pools, or the Rose Bowl 1.5 times. The tires that we've collected, if you place them end to end, tread to tread, as if they were rolling down the road, would be able to span back and forth on the Golden Gate Bridge 3.5 times. That's just tires. An incredible amount of effort has gone into picking up litter, including holding dump day events across the state. We've held 114 dump day events, which is where we encourage the community to bring in trash and dump it, like large appliances, a refrigerator, an old computer, tires, because the possibility of those ending up on our roads is avoided when we bring it in this way. So a tremendous amount of effort has gone into this. We're able to do this. We've hired quite a few folks as within Caltrans itself. These are entry-level positions called service assistant maintenance positions. This is an excellent low barrier entry job to get on with the state and have an excellent potential to move up within the organization. And we're also have contracted with the Butte County Office of Education, and they are running a statewide campaign to provide eventually 82 crews, what we call back to work crews. And these are staffed by, these are transitional jobs that are really intended to provide opportunities for Californians overcoming barriers to employment. And that's like people experiencing homelessness, unemployed veterans, and people re-entering society from incarceration. So almost 700 people will be employed on these 82 crews across the state picking up litter in California. I already talked about the dump days that we've held, 114 so far today, or so far this year. And we've had a tremendous outpouring of support from sponsors and from citizens. We've added 711 new highway adopted sections this year. So since we began the Clean California effort, 711 new teams and individuals have signed up to adopt a highway. And I'll briefly talk about some of the projects that we're doing, since now we are actually starting to see some results. We awarded our very first state beautification project and broke ground on this in Humboldt County. Let's see, just last month in April. That's the Vance Parklet project, a very small project that we're doing with an innovative contracting method, which is basically delivered by what we call maintenance work order. It's currently a dumping ground right on the edge of the Humboldt Bay Wildlife Refuge. So we're turning it into a little parklet. We're gonna spruce it up, and we're gonna make it a place where you can overlook the wildlife refuge instead of dumping your trash there. And the whole idea of this kind of project is to turn an area of blight into something that the community can be proud of and take care of and not dump garbage on. So there's going to be, lost my notes there, 126 of these state beautification projects across the state. We've also advertised the second of these projects. The Chumash Museum project has been advertised and is in the process of being awarded. And this will basically enhance an area directly adjacent to the Chumash Heritage Museum and Cultural Center that is basically an undeveloped lot with weeds, and we're going to turn it into a beautiful area. We've been collaborating with the public, local tribes, obviously local agencies to work on developing that scope together to come up with something that the community can really get behind. So we've held a lot of events for the local grants as well. We have 105 local grants that were awarded in March, $300 million worth of grants for local projects, and are proud to partner with folks up and down the state on groundbreakings and project announcements on those. With that, I will end my presentation, and I'll be happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, and congratulations on your prestigious awards. We're proud to be your partner. I kept hearing you say dump days, and I kept thinking you were saying dunk days. And I was picturing you and Secretary Omashakin in the dunk tank, and I'm like, okay, well, if it raises money awareness, I'm okay with it. But I'm glad it's dump days. I'm glad I heard that differently.
You might be able to raise a lot of money there.
Right? Commissioner Norton, I believe you had a question?
I did. I want to thank you for providing us some of these facts, and I was wondering if you can make sure, maybe have that in a sheet, because I think this is really extraordinary in terms of what the Clean Up California program is doing. I also wanted to thank you for the MOUs that you're creating with a lot of nonprofits to help in this work. And I know one in the LA area, Chrysalis, that you're actually helping to provide jobs for the formerly houseless. And I just want to commend you and ask how that's moving along with those MOUs where there are people who are not just adopting a highway, but really want to look at the underpasses and some areas that have like really some tremendous issues about trash, but also the homeless who are needing to be given other opportunities to find places to live.
Yeah, thank you for that. I don't have information on that, but I will commit to having staff get back to you with more information. And thank you for the suggestion. We do have fact sheets on Clean California. We need to do a better job of getting those out to you all.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? And thank you, Acting Director Cack.
Thank you.
I understand we do not have a report from FHWA, is that correct? That's at Vincent, I'm pretty sure. Yes. Then we will move on to Regional Agencies Moderator Don Batiste.
All right, thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Dawn Batiste, representing the statewide Regional Transportation Planning Agencies, or the RTPA group. And so on behalf of the group, I'd like to extend our congratulations to Commissioner Lugo. I will probably be repeating this in June when the commissioner is able to be with us. And I also want to recognize former Commissioner Fran Inman, whose efforts on behalf of all Californians on freight and goods movement issues is very much appreciated. And I'm not sure if she's on the line today, but we wish her the best. And Christine, we're going to miss you. Congratulations on your job, and thank you for everything you've done for the state with your work on SB1. There are several important topics on the agenda that were discussed at the regional planning agency meeting that we had yesterday. So I'd like to start out with the topic of the AB 285 report. And the RTPA group hosted 2 meetings with the Strategic Growth Council and Egon Terplin to discuss the various white papers and the report. And while there may not be agreement on how best to measure performance, the RTPAs and MPOs are in alignment with the state's climate goals, and we all acknowledge that there is more work to do to determine how best to demonstrate progress, and we are committed to continuing those discussions. At the same time, we also acknowledge the concept of one size doesn't fit all. So Commissioner Martinez, thank you for your remarks on that earlier. Caltrans staff presented on several topics, starting with updates on the state bicycle and pedestrian plan progress, reported by Romeo Estrella, and we're looking forward to the survey that is going to be opening later this month to contribute to this effort. Dee Lamb, Neil Peacock, and Sujaya Kalinasan of Local Assistance all presented on issues from Local Assistance Training Day scheduled for June 7th, as well as the status of local agency delivery of federally funded projects and use of federal obligation authority or OA. With the passage of the bipartisan infrastructure law and more OA available, the regional agencies are working diligently to make sure that the funds are obligated timely and that we can help the state secure additional OA through August redistribution. With that in mind, we will be meeting again with local assistance next week to discuss obligation authority and obligation plans in further detail. Next, Hannah Walter kicked off the CTC staff items with a discussion of the use of TSEP funds for advanced programming, since this agenda includes 2 of those items. And while this has been allowed previously, this is the first time that we're seeing it. And we're very supportive and thankful for this process for agencies that wish to compete a little more strongly for their federal funds. This led into the general SB1 guideline development discussion with Matthew Yozgat. He reported that around 20 workshops were held, and clearly there were an abundance of workshops, and we greatly appreciate the dialogue that has been afforded through these workshops and incorporation of our thoughts throughout the process. And thank you to Lori Waters for providing details on several ATP items, including the benefits report and user counts policy, and an update on potential ATP augmentation from the state budget surplus. She did provide an additional reminder that evaluators are still being sought for the 2023 cycle. And so we put out a call through our group to continue encouraging evaluators to sign up. Keith Duncan discussed the state budget proposal and may revise. And then he moved on to a discussion on the proposed bipartisan infrastructure law 60-40 split. This was accompanied by a discussion on distribution of federal PROTECT funding, which is the Promoting Resilient Operations for Transformative, Efficient, and Cost-Saving Transportation program. And we are eagerly awaiting federal guidance for that program. We greatly appreciate the efforts that were made with Keith and with the IIJA implementation group to reach some consensus on the 60-40 split. And next month, our group will elect the moderator and vice moderator who will serve for next fiscal year. And so at next month's meeting, I will be introducing them to you in my final report from Sacramento. So this concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions from our commissioners? Commissioner Grisby?
Yeah, just wanted to hear more about your perspective on the AB 285 report that you referenced briefly.
I think there is general consensus that that we have the same goals in mind and we are working towards them. I think there's also consensus that we need to determine a way to measure that progress that is not necessarily based on work reflected in our TIPs, in our transportation improvement programs, our programming documents. That the purpose of the TIP doesn't cover everything that agencies work on and do. Doesn't cover all the significant investments that we are making towards moving to the goals. So we need to find a way to measure what we do and the progress that we are making. And we need to jointly come together and reach some consensus on how best to do that. I mean, from regional agency to regional agency, you know, at the MPO level, some of us have different rules for and requirements for what we require our agencies to program in our TIPs. Local dollars I require my agencies to program might not be required in another area if they're not federally required or required by the state. So I think it's, again, one size doesn't fit all. The TIPs don't reflect the same thing in every MPO and region throughout the state, but we have to find a way to demonstrate the progress, and we need to find a measurable way to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your report. Oh, one more, Commissioner Falcone.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to express appreciation to Don for, you know, for being here. And I understand that you'll be transitioning next month, and I know that we'll see you again next month. But I wanted to take the opportunity, since you're from my region, and you've been a very helpful and informative and sort of a mentor to me as I've been getting my feet wet in the commission. So I appreciate your presence here and all the work that you've been doing on behalf of your colleagues throughout California representing the region. So thanks so much, Don, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
For the Rural Counties Task Force, we have Maura Toomey that will be presenting.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Maura Toomey with the Rural Counties Task Force. And first, I'd like to welcome Commissioner Lugo to the Commission, and we look forward to working with her. And of course, we want to thank Commissioner Inman for her many years of service. She was a good collaborator with the rural counties, and we wish for her the best. And of course, we want to congratulate Christine on her promotion and are sorry that she will no longer be working with us. And with that, I have the following updates. The rural counties are continuing to participate in the IIJA working groups and appreciate Caltrans and CalSTA's outreach and consideration of rural concerns regarding implementation. Second, the rural counties are coordinating with Aegon Terplin of the Strategic Growth Council regarding issues raised in the AB 285 report and the need to identify and address the climate and transportation challenges in rural communities. And finally, the rural counties appreciate Caltrans' outreach regarding the Interregional Transportation Strategic Plan Addendum and the continuing discussions regarding the need for critical safety, evacuation, and operational improvements on rural interregional corridors. That concludes my report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions, Commissioners? Thank you very much. You got off easy. Next, we have Keith Dunn, Self-Help Counties Coalition Executive Director. Welcome, Keith.
Thank you, Chairwoman and Commissioners. It's always a pleasure to be in fabulous Fresno. Driving down from Sacramento today, I couldn't help but think to myself how nice it would be to be riding on a high-speed rail train from Sacramento down the valley and avoid the traffic and the trucks and the clean air. So I'm glad that you all had the opportunity to go out and see some of the facilities, the hard work here. I know the Chairwoman has worked on that project with me for years. I'll be happy to tell my good friend Brian Kelly that you all got to see some of the hard work that his agency is doing. It's important, it's critical, and it's also a good response to the climate action plan and challenges that we have as a state. So that's my plug for that agency. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about high-speed rail, not high-speed rail, self-help counties. So I appreciate and will note that one of the words that I've heard consistently throughout the reports and updates from the Commission and from my agency partners is partnership. I'd like to single out Director Keck, which I'm happy to call, and his Deputy Director, Mr. Keever, for meeting with us last Friday, the self-help counties and the directors, and really talking about partnership and how we deliver programs that my agencies are not only obligated to by their bondholders, but also by the voting public. I've also heard today consistently that one size doesn't fit all. Boy, that could not be more true. And I think that the best thing that we can do, and when we look at projects and we look at the 41 here locally where we have major safety concern issues, and it's a widening and it's going to increase in B&T, but that's a project that needs to get fixed, needs to be done, needs to be completed. And the more that we can have discussions and we don't have statutory restrictions that prevent those discussions from taking place, we have smart people like Director Keck, who with his staff can meet with agencies and come to you and present programs that make sense. So we have been looking and discussing with the legislature, and there's a couple proposals out there that I will just say would restrict abilities for agencies to have conversations with the department to move forward on projects that need safety and repair. We are talking with the sponsors of those bills, and we too share the goals of reduced VMTs and climate reduction impact projects, but we also have to have some safety and some repairs. One size doesn't fit all, and we stand committed to be the partner for the commission, but also for the department to make sure that California citizens get the types of programs that provide safe passage for them and their families, but also for our environment. So that's a critical point. Along those lines, the self-help counties has been preparing and updating not only the list of our 25 expenditure plans, so that hopefully in the next month or so, I'll be able to give them to you so you can see the types of investments. And these are billions of dollars that are invested in our local communities that have passed with 2/3 vote. So we work and reach out to all aspects of each community to get that support. We're going to be updating that expenditure plan list so you all can see that. We're also going to be putting an update on the different modes that those dollars go and invest towards. So we'll be able to show you and put together, and I like pie charts because number one, I like pie, it's easy to read. So we're going to be putting those charts together. I hope to be able to share them with you, if not at the June meeting, then soon after that, so that we can all kind of see where those dollars are going and what those investments are, because I think it's really critical as your partner and partner with the department. And again, over $5 billion worth of partnership per year annually from the 25 self-help counties. So we're a big partner. We share your goals. We want to show you what we're investing in. We have the same priorities, but we also want to make sure that there's safety, roads of repair. We keep the promise to not only our voters, but SB1, which was a hard fought initiative that I think all of us are very aware of, and it's been a lot of time working to make sure it was passed. So closing out, we also think that it's important to have a request in to get the type of data so we can have that good information. So we're looking to make a request of the administration to have an investment in allowing agencies to collect data that the UC Institute has done. I've talked to Executive Director Weiss about that. I think this would be a perfect body to kind of oversee that investment. We've reached out to the administration. I think you're going to see some efforts from other groups to support that. But having that information as agencies is going to allow us to best provide the type of information when we're coming and talking to you about projects. And not every agency within our 25 self-help counties has those resources right now. And we have 58 counties in the state, some of which have no resources. And if we're asking them to meet that metric, I think that the state should provide an opportunity to have them come apply for those resources and then report back and provide that information to you and to the department. So whether it happens this budget cycle or the next, I think that's something that we should all agree that having that information is good and critical and will be helpful for all of us to meet our goals. Wrapping up, I know I'm being long-winded here, but with FHWA not reporting, I feel like I've got an extra 20 minutes. Yeah, that's right. I had my list of jokes coming, but I set those aside. So I would also say that and I'm gonna say fingers crossed so I don't jinx us, gonna be meeting in person for the Focus on the Future conference in November. It's going to be in Newport Beach. We always have a report from your director, but I personally, for those of you that have not had the opportunity to attend, would like to invite you to come and attend this event. You'll have all of the self-help counties, many folks from the department in different districts, commission. We report from you as well. It's hopefully going to be an opportunity for all of us to get together to talk about great policies on how we meet the needs and challenges of our state, but do it in an atmosphere that's gorgeous down in Newport Beach. So with that, I will be quiet. I appreciate the time and the opportunity and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And yes, Newport Beach, we're in. I just want to say one quick thing. I certainly support the data collection that we all know in this state that if you don't have data to back it up, it didn't happen. And there are so many of our rural communities, our small communities that don't have access to the ability to be able to collect that data. So thank you so much for bringing that forward. And Vice Chair Gardino, you had a comment or question?
Yes, thank you. Keith, great report as always. Thanks for your work. Earlier, we heard about the renewal of Measure C here in Fresno. Is that June or November? I assume November?
November.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. And again, this is a 2/3 vote that they really do have to, even if they didn't want to, have to reach out to everyone in the community to get their input. And there's a lot of, for lack of better terms, horse trading that goes on so that they can get to that 2/3 support. Think of you, if any of you that had elected offices, 2/3 is, 54% is a landslide, 2/3 is out of the question. So they do a lot of great work there, as the other 25 counties have as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other?
Yes.
Okay.
Keith, I want to thank you for your report, and you bring up, promises made in SB1, but there were also promises made in defeating Prop 6.
Absolutely.
And there are a lot of people who are still focused on a lot of the projects that were in there. And I wanted to ask you, as you're collecting data, one of the things that we've found, especially in the 285 report and others, is that there's an assumption of what kind of project something is based on a title versus what the actual outcome was of the project. And so how are you going to be looking at gap closures for bike lanes or things that are going to be those projects that actually make systems improve better, and instead of just having it seem as though it's one kind of project, if it's multimodal, to really talk about the multimodes, if it's pricing with transit on it, to add that so that it's very clear that you may have a bike lane, a bridge, a lot of things all together, but you're showing everything that got done instead of just making an assumption based on a title of a project.
Thank you for that question. I said the first thing that I do is I listen to the people who are all smarter than me, like Dr. Wolf, who's behind me here, to put those together. But we're going to be putting together those modal snapshots so that you can see what those dollars are getting you, and hopefully have a holistic approach, because as we all talk about, our transportation system doesn't stop at the Fresno line. It goes north, south, east, and west. So we have to look at it as a holistic approach on what those dollars are delivering and how they're improving our communities as a whole. I think that our effort to try and get this data, at least internally, that we have control over, and then eventually hopefully get some resources to do a broader study, will help give that vision of what that project means as a region. And really this is, regional, local, and state and federal. So we'll hopefully get that information to you sooner than later.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Keith.
Thank you very
Appreciate it.
much.
And I understand we have no public comment on the reports. Okay, thank you. Then we will take out of order tab 21. Hannah?
Yes, commissioners. Tab 21 is an advanced funding request for 2 projects from the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program. So sometimes the application deadlines don't completely align for state and federal grant programs. And if an applicant is going to apply for a federal grant, it's sometimes beneficial for them to be able to secure the state funding first so that they can be scored more competitively in their federal grant application. So to address that, since cycle 1, the Trade Corridor program has allowed the commission to award advanced funding for projects, and applicants still need to submit regular Trade Corridor applications. So this year is the first year that we've had 2 applications for advanced funds. The first one is from Solano County. It's a commercial vehicle enforcement facility on I-80. And we funded this program in Trade Corridors for design in cycle 2. The facility was built in the 50s and it can't accommodate the truck throughput on that segment. So the project will make some off ramps to prevent truck queuing to the facility. It will replace the facility, and it will also include zero emission freight infrastructure at the facility. The Solano Transportation Authority is requesting $64.8 million for construction of this project. And the second project is a freight corridor improvement project on I-10 in San Bernardino County. That project, that segment has been rated the 9th worst bottleneck in the US by the American Transportation Research Institute. So the project will make improvements on that segment. Some of the money requested is also it will also go to zero emissions infrastructure. And some of the toll revenue associated with the project may also go to a clean truck incentive program. And the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority is requesting $85 million for construction of that project. So staff have reviewed both of these applications and are recommending approval of these requests. I also want to note that we would like to continue to work with our stakeholders to figure out the best way to handle advanced funds and the language and the guidelines for future years. We appreciate all the input we've received so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. And there were only 2 that required the advance at this time.
That's correct.
And I understand Dr. Wolf is here. If you could come up, that'd be great. Thank you. I believe Commissioner Norton wanted to ask you a question.
I did. This is one of the projects I think we've talked about that has a multiple level of benefits. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, as I read this, the managed lanes and the TSEP program helping to contribute to zero emission trucks. Can you talk a little bit more about that and the overall picture of this project? Because it sounds very exciting.
Yeah, let me maybe start with more than a decade ago, we began looking at managed lanes as part of the SCAG region's master plan for better managing traffic. And I should introduce myself, even though I was asked up. My name is Ray Wolf, the Executive Director of the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority. And so over a decade ago, we were trying to figure out how do we increase the throughput, because our community really serves as a bedroom community. And even today, we're seeing more and more of the population from the coastal counties migrating inland to find more affordable housing, right? Unfortunately, the job centers remain largely in the coastal counties. And so we're dealing or struggling with a growing commuter traffic problem. We've invested a tremendous amount of money in the last decade, working closely with our partner at Metrolink to improve the connectivity, the transit connectivity. You know, we're talking with Brightline West now about connecting to Metrolink in Rancho Cucamonga all the way to Las Vegas. We're talking about a tunnel project that will make that last mile connection from that station, that Metrolink station, Ontario International Airport. The investment on I-10 was originally anticipated to be 2 lanes in each direction, managed lanes in each direction. And we're actually in construction on the first 10 miles from the LA County line east to Interstate 15, where we'll actually open that next summer for beneficial use. And we had cleared 33 miles, so another 23 miles heading east of 2 lanes in each direction. But we've listened closely to the direction the state is going, and we agree. We understand the importance of adapting and recognizing the impact of transportation to our climate, right? And so we worked with stakeholders, and we pared the project down heading east to 1 lane in each direction. But that 1 lane is critically important, because not only do we have a growing commuter flow of traffic, but we're also a major hub for logistics and warehousing as part of the supply chain throughout Southern California, which is a key economic driver here in California. And so we have to do something, right? So we went to our board and we said, well, with the commuter traffic, we need to do more on the transit side. We don't have a lot of money in our expenditure plan to help us focus on transit. And so one of the priorities with excess revenue from the toll projects that we're building is to invest in transit. On this segment, we came back and we said, you know, we're starting to talk to industry. We're talking to some of the logistics and warehouse facilities in the Inland Empire about what they're thinking for the future, right? Because we need the truck industry to convert to zero emission. Our communities suffer mightily from air quality issues. And so we recognize that the trucking industry, the heavy trucking industry, is really focusing right now on hydrogen. Now, we're introducing the first hydrogen passenger rail vehicle that'll actually be in San Bernardino County next year. It's a first in North America. So we're piloting that in concert with Caltrans and with CalSTA. And it's really exciting to be on the leading edge of that. And so hydrogen was something that's already sort of front and center in our minds. And we thought, well, what can we do that takes a freeway project that we're already trying to, make a better project? How can we make it even better? Well, the trucking industry is really struggling with, you know what, until we have the fueling infrastructure in place, we're not going to be successful. We're not selling these vehicles. And so here's an opportunity to say, not only do we need to invest in highway improvements, but make part of those improvements what we need to get to the future even more quickly. So part of this request, $10 million, is for hydrogen fueling infrastructure. The other part of this is our board has now committed that not only are we going to focus as a priority for excess toll revenue on transit, but also on fleet turnover, heavy duty truck fleet turnover. We haven't quantified what that program is going to look like just yet. We're talking to South Coast AQMD. We talked to CalSTART staff because we'd rather partner with an existing program, right, than create our own program. And we do want to make sure that, there is a true benefit to the residents of San Bernardino County. But we also recognize it's impossible to say just San Bernardino County, right? So it may end up being that the fleet has to be domiciled in San Bernardino County to qualify for these funds. So that's the direction we're pushing. And so I think this is a really exciting project that's addressing some challenges that exist today, but also looking to the future and how we can do a better job as a transportation agency to help guide that future.
I just wanted to ask one follow-up question to that. And I know you've been trying to pursue, as we'd all gone and talked to the federal government, to ask for additional leeway in the TSEP program so that you could have fueling potentially at rest stops. Can you talk about your progress there, and how can we help, or Caltrans help, to look at continuing to move that needle to allow more charging and fueling for these trucks that are going to need it along the way?
So one of the ideas here is, as truck traffic grows through a community, the impacts are felt not only on the freeways, but at the interchanges and in the local street circulation, right? And a lot of times the trucks are just getting off to refuel. And so actually along this particular alignment for this project that we're talking about here today, on the westbound 10 freeway in Fontana, there's actually an abandoned rest area. Well, rest areas are great because they have on and off ramps, but they don't affect local circulation. And so we've started a conversation. I've been working with Hannah and with others to try to figure out how can you repurpose initially that rest stop that's not being used for anything more than storage and striping training for Caltrans crews. How could you repurpose that? Because think of it, right? Trucks can get off of the freeway at this facility that's dedicated to, and it's not hydrogen only, right? We be agnostic in the type of fuel. Let industry kind of guide us in that direction, be agnostic. But then when they're done, they can get back on and head on their way. Another issue that we have struggled, and Commissioner Inman talked about this for many years on the commission, is rest areas for truckers, right? A lot of the communities that we're talking about that surround this investment on I-10 have trucks that pull up in neighborhoods to rest overnight or to rest during the day to get their 8 hours of rest. And that's not fair to those communities, right? And so we need to do a better job. And these rest stops, particularly ones that aren't being used anymore, I think provide an ideal opportunity to really do something that has a positive impact on the entire industry and all of the stakeholders.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Liu?
Yeah, two quick things. First, I do encourage you to work with South Coast on specifically that issue of benefits to your local community in San Bernardino, because South Coast has administered a program through Carl Moyer that required trucks to use the ports and the corridors. And so they've already developed the way to track and to attest and to enforce that requirement for trucks. And so I think they could probably be a lot of help for that. And I do love the idea of using unused property, rest stops, don't impact communities for refueling or charging. And if, I don't know how much you've looked into it, but hydrogen can take a lot of infrastructure if you're actually putting the compressors on site and all of that. But some companies, and one in particular, TTSI, that's located in the Port of Los Angeles, has a couple of hydrogen fuel cell trucks they've been demonstrating. And what they've done is just had a truck come in, drop a hydrogen tank, and then they fuel it from that tank directly. So it needs no infrastructure other than a fence around a tank and a hookup. And so they've been able to do that on a limited, temporary basis until more trucks become available and they need a full fueling facility. So there are things I think you can do on an interim basis to get it up and running quickly without having to put in the compressors and, the capabilities and electricity and everything else you need to do a full system.
Yeah, so completely agree with you on your first point. Again, we would prefer to work with an existing program. On your second point, I talked about the zero emission passenger vehicle or passenger rail vehicle that we'll be testing later next year in San Bernardino. And actually, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to have fuel trucked to the site. Now, the key is you've got to have that fuel trucked by non-diesel trucks, right? So those are some details we got to work through, but certainly that's the way you start. And then depending upon the demand, you may have to do something more grand, or you may not, right?
Thank you. Do you have any other questions from commissioners, comments? Do we have any, down there at the very end, Commissioner Grisby.
Just want to make a comment. And I grew up in the area, Inland Empire, as you know, and I just want to thank you for the innovation that you're working on and making sure that it's a multimodal project, as was mentioned. It's very important. I have a question for staff as well, though. So with this advance payment that we're doing to help get the federal dollars, is there a way to do that for some of the rail projects that we talked about a couple of months ago? Maybe in the future, not those particular projects, but.
So I would say in general, this is one of the things we're looking to how to be more creative than we've been in the past. This is one example, but seeing the transition in the federal program towards competitive or what they call discretionary funding, how do we make sure that we have the state funds available and the state commitment to help our projects in California being more successful? So we're going to be looking not just in this program, but other programs. How can we do things like this, or are there other ways to do this to do more efficiently? Not just this project, not just rail projects, but all the projects that are meeting both California and federal goals. How do we help them compete more effectively?
Thank you. I think Commissioner Norton has one more follow-up question.
Yes.
You don't get to sit down yet.
I was really thought it was compelling about the Fontana site, and I was wondering what you need in order to help make that coordination happen. How are there things that CTC can do to help? What are the next steps with Caltrans or others to make it happen?
So I think the first thing is to make sure that the funding that was used to acquire and build that rest stop decades ago doesn't restrict us. And if it does, I think we're dealing with a different federal government than we were decades ago, right? And so I think we just need to, if we think this is a good idea, and I personally think it's a great idea, then I think we just need to figure out what are the hurdles and how do we get past those obstacles to make it happen.
Thank you.
Okay, now any other questions, concerns, comments?
Chair Eager, may I add something really quick about
Yes, please do.
I just want to note something because we'd been working with Dr. Wolf on this issue and Caltrans. And so one of the challenges is that the really large truck stop owners, companies in the state, we're trying to partner closely with them for the Senate Bill 671 Clean Freight Corridor work. And so we had a conversation with some of the larger companies about this, and they really, really, really oppose this idea for several reasons. So I think that, and there are current federal laws that prohibit us from, or prohibit charging money for, you wouldn't be able to charge money to people who are charging at that site or refueling at that site. So it makes it difficult to use it. And if we were going to go lobby, the federal government to try to change those laws, then we would be in direct conflict with some of those large trucking companies that we're trying to work with. So that's one of the challenges that we ran into. And so, I mean, one potential solution, we were talking with some of the right-of-way folks at Caltrans, would be if Caltrans owned and operated the facility, but we just don't know how feasible that is. And I, of course, couldn't answer that. It would be a Caltrans question. But even though it's a great alternative, there are some real challenges there.
Thank you. Any other questions? And do we have any public comment?
I see no public comment at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I will accept a motion to approve.
Tabellone approves. Move.
Grigsby second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Hannah. Now we have Paul to discuss the state and federal legislative matters.
Commissioners, tab 14 is an action item. Staff are recommending the commission send a letter to the legislature expressing support for increased funding for transportation infrastructure as the budget process is approaching the June 15th deadline for the legislature to pass the budget. Please note that a final revised version of this book item, including the draft letter we are recommending sending to the legislature, was distributed this morning and posted online, and print copies also have been provided today. The final print copies are on the white paper, not pink. Given that Under Secretary Kanov in her report summarized the governor's May revision proposals, I won't repeat them again, but they are listed in the book item. Also included in it is a description of the Senate majority's transportation infrastructure proposal that they released in late April, which includes funding levels beyond what was proposed by the governor. The letter that we are recommending you send to the legislature starts by expressing support for the increased investments for transportation infrastructure proposed by the governor. It then discusses the active transportation program specifically, expressing appreciation that the proposed funding was increased from $500 million to $1 billion, but also reiterating that the commission's needs for this program total $2 billion. The letter then emphasizes the commission's successes in implementing the Senate Bill 1 programs and ensuring robust accountability over agencies for their expenditures and keeping projects on time and within budget. And finally, the letter acknowledges the legislature may want to increase funding beyond the levels proposed by the governor, and that the commission would stand ready to implement any additional funding that is included in the final budget. Sending this letter regarding the budget is the only action staff are recommending at this time, but there's also updated information on the status of policy bills in the book item. As it is still early in the policy bill process, staff are not recommending the commission adopt any positions on legislation at this time. We'll continue to monitor bills and, if needed, bring forward for consideration bill positions at our next meeting. And with that, staff recommends you approve this item.
Justin, do we have any public comment?
I see no public comment at this time. Thank you.
Do we have any questions or concerns, comments from our commissioners?
Move approval by Lou.
Do I have a second? Second by Norton. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Paul. I think you're up again.
Yeah, Commissioners, tab 15 is an informational update from Keith Duncan of Caltrans Division of Budget regarding how much funding the Commission has allocated to date this fiscal year, as well as an update on transportation revenue estimates and some additional information on budget proposals regarding Caltrans staffing and other matters. And Keith is here virtually today for his presentation. I see he's ready. I think you're muted, Keith. We still can't hear you, Keith.
Am I coming through now?
Now you are, yes.
Great. Thank you, Paul. My apologies. Thank you very much. Madam Chair, Commissioners, good afternoon. Happy Wednesday. Again, Keith Duncan with Caltrans Division of Budgets. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to provide the budget and allocation capacity update for you today. To begin, as a quick status check, next slide, please. Through March, the Commission has allocated approximately $3.4 billion across 606 projects across all transportation programs within the Commission's purview. This represents about 41% allocated of the total $8.2 billion available within the current 21-22 fiscal year. A couple of the highlights: the local partnership program, LPP, is about 60% allocated through the fiscal year. The SHOP, the State Highway Operation Protection Program, as well as the STIP, the State Transportation Improvement Program, both programs hover around 50% allocated through the fiscal year. Through being March representing the end of the third quarter, 41% is a bit low when we're comparing this current fiscal year to prior fiscal years. Next slide, please. This slide is just intended to show how the allocation rate for the current fiscal year compares to the prior 3 fiscal years. There at the bottom of the line, you can see the green colored line that represents the percent allocated as we have progressed through the current fiscal year. You can see it just since December, we've closed the gap when we're comparing to the most recent 2021 fiscal year, which is represented by the blue line, but we're still a bit lower when comparing all 4 fiscal years together. As Executive Director Weiss mentioned earlier today, there is $900 million available for your consideration to be allocated over the next couple of days, and that will bring us up a little bit over 50% through May, which again is still a bit lower when comparing to the prior fiscal years. We will continue to have our ongoing discussions with our Caltrans program managers to see what can be done to try to get much of this funding allocated to projects, whether that involves advancement of projects that are scheduled to be programmed to be coming forward for next fiscal year, see if we can advance those, or if there's other opportunities to get this funding allocated and to work as quickly as possible. Next slide, please. Next, we wanted to share a brief update regarding transportation revenue. Overall, across all major state transportation revenue sources through the first 10 months of the fiscal year through April, actual revenues are in line with the 21-22 enacted budget projections provided by the Department of Finance. There are some ebbs and flows in relation to a couple of the items there. As you can see, gas excise tax, diesel sales tax, and as well as the transportation road improvement fee are slightly above, while the weight fee as well as diesel excise tax is slightly below. But bottom line, through April is estimated to be about $10.4 billion in total revenue received, and as you can see, actual is about $10.4 billion received. We'll continue to monitor as we progress through the fiscal year. These are the reduced projected revenues that are impacted by the pandemic. So we're continuing to monitor there just to ensure that the revenues continue to come in line, because we definitely want to make sure that we're getting funding allocated on the projects, because they are hand in hand, getting revenue coming in and making sure that it's being allocated on the projects as quickly as possible. Next slide, please. Next, as has already been shared, this past Friday, the governor released the May revise, which is the revised proposed budget for the upcoming 22-23 fiscal year. And also, as mentioned, Undersecretary Canova has already provided an eloquent update related to the broad transportation related relief package offered by the governor's package. So we won't go into any more details at this time. Next slide, please. Also, as part of the May revise was a handful of finance letters submitted by Caltrans for consideration as part of the proposed budget. Many of them are just associated with projected workload increases for the upcoming fiscal year. One related to our overall project delivery efforts for projects allocated by the Commission, as well as to support the overall Broadband for All initiative, which is installing broadband on Caltrans roadsides. Also included is an increase in resources to support the increase in federal funding associated with the passage of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, as well as Caltrans is beginning efforts, the state's fiscal system. We're looking to, Caltrans is looking at a multi-year effort to convert over to the state's fiscal system over the next couple of years. So this next fiscal year will begin our planning efforts. So we're requesting additional resources to help us as we begin to transition to the new system. Next slide, please. From a budget perspective, we're definitely excited over the next couple of months. For the month of June, we're definitely looking forward to the ongoing negotiations with the administration and the state legislature, and look forward to a legislative approval budget by the June 15th statutory deadline, and then anticipated for the budget to be signed by June 30th and enacted by July 1. We'll also be spending the month of June continuing to implement the federal funding for the current federal fiscal year. As it's previously been mentioned, we have a mutual understanding consensus agreement of the splitting of the funds, with 60% going to state and 40% going to local. So collectively working to get this funding implemented, distributed, and obligated as quickly as possible, because as we know, the ultimate goal at the end of the federal fiscal year is to qualify for August redistribution. So we're definitely working as quickly as possible from both a state and local perspective. For the commission meeting scheduled for the end of June, we'll be presenting to you the draft Trade Corridor Enhancement Program Fund Estimate for the next cycle of projects, as well as we'll be presenting you the draft allocation capacity for the upcoming 22-23 fiscal year. And then at the commission meeting in August, we'll then be presenting the TCEP fund estimate for your consideration for adoption, as well as the final allocation capacity for the 22-23 fiscal year, which is basically the base funding as well as any carryover funding that for those programs that did not allocate all of their funding in the current fiscal year. Next slide, please. With that, I would like to offer my thanks to commission staff, Caltrans financial programming staff, as well as our Caltrans budgets revenue team for everyone's help with the details and the presentation provided to you today. And with that, I'll make myself available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Keith. I believe Vice Chair Gardino has a question.
Thank you, Chair Eager. Keith, could you go back to slide 39, please? People usually don't complain about that, Douglas, but I'll try harder for you. Keith, could you please go back to slide 39?
I might need some help from the team.
39.
There we go.
Thank you. As I looked at this and I look at the provisions for funding in Senate Bill 1, is the transportation road / improvement fee, is that the funds through AV vehicle registration fee, or is that not captured on this chart?
Thank you. Sorry for clarification purposes. That is combined. That is the transportation improvement fee, which is the registration based fee that was included as part of the passage of Senate Bill 1, and the road improvement fee that's associated to electric vehicles. So from a revenue perspective, we typically combine them for reporting purposes.
Thank you. And when I said AV, I did mean EV. So thank you again for that clarification. Glad to see that's bringing in some revenue. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? Concerns? No, we're good. All right. Well, thank you so much, Keith. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So at this time, I think we're going to take a brief break, and we will come back at 3:15. Does that work for everyone? And because I didn't get to use this at the beginning, I'm using it now. Okay, great. Yeah.
Like your coffee. Right? So, don't forget about that cookie. Caltrans. Oh, that's too bad, 'cause it's good. Really? Okay. It probably is. Probably. Mhm. Huh? Did you shook her? No. The woman, the security that's here to like kick us out? What are you talking about? Oh no, you're talking about the sheriff. No. Did we say that they were here?
Don't ask, don't tell.
Tabalone's on.
Thank you, sir.
I'm very proud of you. We're back, Doug? Okay, we're ready to go. Looks like we are on item number 16. Paul again.
Commissioners, tab 16 is an informational update on implementation of the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which is also referred to as the IIJA. As you heard earlier from Undersecretary Kanov, CalSTA's IIJA working groups are continuing to meet. However, an overarching framework for how to split the approximately $5.5 billion in FHWA formula funds for federal fiscal year 2022 between the state and regional and local programs has been developed. The attachments in your book item contain a description of each of the FHWA formula funding programs, the amounts included in the IIJA as compared to the prior fiscal year, and the detail on how the funds for each program are proposed to be split. It's important to note that this framework could be subject to change in future years as the state is still waiting for additional FHWA guidance and as the working groups continue to develop more detailed action plans. But to summarize at a high level, the IIJA increased funding for 7 existing formula programs. And the funding split for each of those programs is largely the same as what California has done in the past with some minor changes. In addition to augmenting those 7 existing programs, the IIJA also created 4 new formula programs, and I'll briefly go through each of those since they're new. So the IIJA created a new National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program to support charging infrastructure. And these funds will be administered by the state through the California Energy Commission in partnership with Caltrans, which will leverage the Energy Commission's existing efforts to fund charging stations statewide. There is also a new carbon reduction program to support projects to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The IIJA requires that about 65% of these funds be suballocated to urbanized areas, and so the remaining 35% will be for the state. The IIJA also created a new PROTECT program, which was referenced earlier, which focuses on climate adaptation and resiliency. The federal bill did not specify how these funds would be distributed, so the framework developed by the working group uses the 60-40 split for this program. And lastly, there's new formula funding in the IIJA specifically for bridges. There are still discussions going on regarding how these funds would be split on an ongoing basis, but for the first year, the working group framework assumes 56% state and 46% local. So the purpose of providing this update today is because Caltrans will be requesting actions at either our June or our August commission meetings to implement the funding increases associated with the framework for federal fiscal year 2022, because those funds will otherwise expire at the end of the fiscal year in September, as Keith Duncan mentioned in his report. So for example, there'll be actions coming forward to increase funding for the State Highway Operation and Protection Program and local assistance allocations, which are being increased through the IIJA formula programs. That will allow Caltrans and local agencies to obligate the funds before they expire. Commission staff will be working with Caltrans in the coming weeks to finalize the details on these actions that will be brought forward. And that concludes my informational update. I can take any questions that you have.
Do any of the commissioners have questions? Do we have any public comment?
I see no public comment.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. Next we have, oh, I see John's in his seat. Next we have John with the adoption of shop guidelines.
Yes, good afternoon, commissioners. Item number 17 is an action item to adopt the shop guidelines. We have been working on the shop guidelines for a while, even back before the new year. And in January, we had a public workshop to receive input on the guidelines. And then the draft guidelines were presented to the commission at the January commission meeting. And then a hearing was held at the March commission meeting for the shop guidelines. And at the hearing, the commission received additional stakeholder comments requesting further revisions. And so in response to that, instead of adopting the shop guidelines at the March meeting as initially proposed, the commission deferred adoption of the shop guidelines to allow additional time to incorporate those requested revisions. Since that time, commission staff has worked with both Caltrans and the interested stakeholders and was able to incorporate most of the requested revisions. I wanted to highlight 3 of the larger changes that were incorporated as a result of that additional collaboration. Number 1, we added language to make the proposed shop document available to the public in a tabular format when it's distributed to regional transportation agencies for initial review, which happens in December. Number 2, we strengthened the language related to equity and the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, CalSTA. We strengthened that language in the development and implementation of the State Highway System Management Plan. So that language is stronger than it was proposed before. And number 3, we added stronger language related to the public availability of project initiation documents, which is helpful because those contain the complete streets decision documents, which was an interest, which some of our advocacy partners were interested in seeing those documents. There's a lot of other positive changes that came from all this collaboration. And I just want to thank Caltrans for their collaboration and our regional and advocacy partners for their collaboration in the development of these guideline revisions. As a reminder to everybody, a track changes version of the shop guidelines is available on the Commission's website until the end of this week. And that concludes my comments on this item, and staff recommends approval.
Thank you, John. I understand we have public comment.
Yes, we do have one virtual attendee looking to make public comment at this time. We have Stuart Cohen. Stuart, you're now free to comment.
Oh, thank you very much. I wanted to just quickly say that 3 months ago, when 19 organizations that are part of Climate Plan wrote a letter recommending these changes that John just mentioned, we were unsure of kind of what the reaction would be. But I'm really happy to say that John Prey and Tim Sobelman of CTC staff worked really closely with us to address all of these major recommendations. And some were very complicated to achieve, actually, especially around the access to data. But with involvement of Mike Johnson and other Caltrans staff, they really came up with some elegant solutions, like adding a suite of fields to the project workbook that will give us all much more access to this data. Amazingly, actually, some of these changes will be implemented within weeks, which is really the speed of sound with an institution as large as Caltrans. So just wanted to say we're very grateful for John and Tim's work with us. It was very collaborative. And with those changes, Transform, which helped organize this effort, is in full support of these shop guidelines. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other public comment?
I see no other public comment at this time. Thank you.
And we have to say we're thrilled with the work of John and Tim also. We appreciate everything you did to get us to this point. So thank you to both of you. Do we have any commissioner comments? Yes, Commissioner Liu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is actually a very good precedent and example for people to understand. One of the key issues we're working on when we're talking about equity is how can members of the public engage effectively in our decision-making processes. And I think what Climate Plan and Transform have led here, and the engagement and the responsibility and responsiveness of Caltrans and our staff's hard work on it, we show how we can take something as important as our shop guidelines and improve them. And actually improving them in a way that encourages more public participation and effective engagement in our decision-making processes. So I'm very happy to hear how this turned out in the end. Thank you guys for the good work.
Commissioner Grigsby?
Yes, just, thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to associate my comments with Commissioner Liu. Congratulate Transform and CTC staff and Climate Plan on great work. Thank you.
I just wanted to say that you rarely hear people talking about moving at the speed of light and sound, and moving at and making sure that we are entirely collaborative. And I think that really says a lot about how we're participating, and the advocates understanding that the extension to this next meeting was to make sure that it all was included and that we were really capturing everything. And so I just want to compliment everyone, because we were all involved in making sure that everyone was heard And this is a really good example of when it all comes together and works. And with that, I wanted to make a motion to approve.
Grisby seconds.
Do we have another public comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair Yeager. We did receive one additional written comment. This comes from Jonathan Matz. Wanted to echo Stuart's comments. Safe Routes Partnership is grateful for the opportunity to influence these guidelines. We're glad that the PIDs and Complete Streets decision documents will be available so that the communities can understand how decisions are made about walking and biking infrastructure on the stretches of state highway that go through their communities, and then influence those decisions. Thank you.
With that, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you so much. Now we will move on to, I think we're on 18 now. California Transportation Plan 2050 implementation. Bridget?
Thank you, Chair Yeager. Commissioners, tab 18 is an informational item. Marlon Flournoy, Division Chief of Transportation Planning at Caltrans, will provide a presentation on the California Transportation Plan 2050 Implementation Progress Report. A draft version of the report was presented to the Commission at the January meeting, and the final report was released in April. Marlon will provide an overview of the Implementation Progress Report, highlight how the Commission's comments informed the final version, and discuss future implementation efforts. With that, I will turn it over to Marlon, who is joining us virtually.
Great, thank you. I just want to confirm if you can hear me. Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And my apologies for not being able to be there in person. But Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to come to you and to talk about our California Transportation Plan implementation. Next slide. I just did want to just provide a bit of a recap. So at the request of the Commission, Caltrans did develop a process for implementing the California Transportation Plan. And the first iteration of this is reflected in our report that was released in April. This iteration of the report focuses on the development of a framework for tracking the CTP implementation, and future iterations will be expanded and include our partners. This report did focus a bit more on the Caltrans focused activities. The department is taking a programmatic approach to this report and is building the appropriate internal infrastructure through a CTP dashboard to continually monitor implementation. Next slide. All right, so CTP implementation is divided into two parts. The first part is more of a qualitative report that provides the narrative on major state efforts implementing the CTP. And the second part is a digital tracking platform that provides more of a quantitative approach. And this will include progress made towards the 132 CTP actions. Caltrans staff are still working on developing the tracking platform. And throughout the course of the year, we'll be working to finalize the dashboard and to start populating it with Caltrans specific actions. And then moving forward, we'll be working with our partners on how to capture their actions as well. Next slide. So we're very thankful to get comments from the Commission. We also received comments from other entities throughout the state, namely the California Association of Council of Governments, Orange County Transportation Authority, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, as well as the California Coastal Commission. The comments were incorporated as appropriate in this report, and I would say some of the biggest changes were the adding an appendix that highlights the 132 CTP actions identified in the CTP 2050. Future iterations, based off of the feedback that we received, will include the dashboard that will be providing performance metrics, data monitoring, as well as analysis. And this is currently being developed, as I had mentioned. And we also recognize the identification of external agencies' roles and responsibilities in the CTP implementation, and this will be included in future reports, and particularly how Caltrans will coordinate with our partners at the regional and state level on inputting data into the dashboard. The dashboard is dependent on individual and external inputs and will evolve over time. Again, Caltrans will work with its partners and districts to test and refine the performance metrics in the data monitoring effort. Finalization of the AB 285 report summary has been released, and it will inform future CTP implementation reports, as well as the next update to the CTP, particularly in regards to having the CTP potentially be a more financially constrained plan as opposed to just being a broad policy document to help guide statewide decisions on transportation investments. There are a couple of obstacles in regards to what a financially constrained could potentially look like in regards to some of the statutory requirements that we have to fulfill. For instance, in statute, it does state that the CTP shall not include project-specific, should not be project-specific. And so there will need to be future conversations in regards to, how we should frame what a financially constrained document could potentially look like. So very much looking forward to those conversations. Next slide. All right, so I did just briefly want to address some of the comments that were provided by the commission. We did receive 7 comments in a letter, and we provided a response letter in regards to those comments. So I'm just going to highlight just a few of the, how we address a few of the comments. So in regards to the first comment about omitting implementation sections, we did include an action list, which includes 132 actions and proposed responsible agencies. Regarding how agencies will support ongoing implementation, so this iteration of the plan focuses on developing a framework for capturing Caltrans specific items, but we will be working with future reporting on how to capture our partners. In regards to the regional transportation plans and the role that they play with CTP implementation, we did include some language in the focused partnership section of the report. And Caltrans is also coordinating with the Strategic Growth Council and the Commission to facilitate conversations with the regions on the role and relationships of CTP and the regional transportation plans. So very much looking forward to that. In regards to the 14 recommendations and associated actions, the digital tracking platform that I had mentioned will be capturing all of the CTP actions associated with the recommendations. Related to the Assembly Bill 285, again, we do have a section in the report that does talk about next steps, and we do reference the AB 285, and also we do mention about the rollout of the dashboard as well. As far as the timeline for activities for the data monitoring, so throughout the course of the year, we'll be working to finalize that dashboard and begin populating it with Caltrans specific actions. And then lastly, in terms of funding sources, we do have a section highlighting funding programs, but we did add additional programs related to SB1, the regional portion of the STIP, as well as the Streets and Roads program. Next slide. All right, so the 2021 implementation report, as previously mentioned, has been finalized, and staff has already begun work on looking at what we need to have in the next annual report, which will be due by the end of the year, and developing the dashboard. Caltrans is exploring how to better leverage our policy advisory committee that help guide the development of both the CTP 2040 and 2050. One thought is to convene the policy advisory committee quarterly and identify how we can improve our implementation efforts, since the group is made up of representatives from tribal governments, state agencies, metropolitan planning organizations, regional transportation planning agencies, as well as our federal partners. community-based organizations, as well as non-governmental entities. Caltrans will continue to leverage existing committees on how to better collaborate and incorporate information into our process. Next slide. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Can you go back one more slide? I missed one key point. As I had mentioned before, Caltrans has actively been involved in the AB 285 workshops, and the final report was released by the Strategic Growth Council. The findings report was released by the Strategic Growth Council in January of this year. Caltrans, we're continuing to look for opportunities to improve our process, and we are having some conversations around exploring the possibility of how we're going to better align our modal plans with the California Transportation Plan. Caltrans recently met with the Michigan Department of Transportation to discuss their one plan, which merged the Michigan State Transportation Plan with their freight and rail plan. So we want to look for opportunities to create some efficiencies and create a better mechanism for implementing not only our CTP, but our modal plans. Caltrans is also exploring the idea of a fiscally constrained plan, as I had mentioned, and the workshops with the AB 285 will better inform some of those discussions. And lastly, Caltrans is identifying additional opportunities to move projects forward that align with CTP 2050 and our CAPDI goals. Okay, now the next slide. Thank you. As far as the next steps, this is an example of what could potentially be included in our digital monitoring process for CTP 2050, and by no means this is final. The digital dashboard will help stakeholders track progress on achieving the CTP 2050. The dashboard is meant to be flexible and will provide and accommodate needs of both internal and external partners. Any reporting on implementation will be updated annually or as data becomes available, and this will help increase transparency and accountability. Staff will regularly convene necessary stakeholders to identify key findings and discuss annual results. As our ongoing implementation progress remains flexible, we will also make any revisions based off of changes based off of federal and state legislation, and include those changes in internal and external stakeholders that would like us to approve upon. Next slide. All right, so as far as our timeline goes, Caltrans will continue developing and rolling out our CTP dashboard, and our goal is to update that by the end of the year. The next implementation report will also be finalized and published by the end of the year. The next slide. All right, I just did want to thank the CTC staff for their continuing coordination and collaboration. I also want to thank the Strategic Growth Council for facilitating some really interesting conversations around how we can improve the CTP 2050. And I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Marlon. That's great information. Do any of our commissioners have any questions? Yes, Commissioner Falcone.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Marlon, for the presentation and incorporating some of the points that were outlined in our January letter. Question, you've referred a few times on financially constrained funding, and just question there, is there a pipeline of projects that you've identified that are already good candidates, to implement the plan, that you want to show, early successes, right? Now that you're going to put everything on a dashboard. And are there flexibility built into this plan for innovative projects that regions, are pursuing?
Okay, yeah, good questions. Internally, we have undertaken a process where we are looking for different projects, that align with our goals. that has started, and so and we're continuing to refine that process. We have something that's called our Caltrans Strategic Investment Strategy, and that actually takes all of the policies that are included in CTP, CAPDI, and other policy documents, and allows us to start evaluating projects to really look for projects that are aligning. And so we've started some of that work. And I would say, given that CTP 2050 is a policy level document, I think there's a lot of flexibility, that allows us to look at innovative ways to actually, help, meet some of the goals that are identified in the plan. So I think there is flexibility built into it, and as we move forward, our goal is to start continuing those conversations and refine this. Until we get the next CTP plan developed, we're going to continue building on the implementation framework that we at least started. So this is our first iteration, and we're going to have this be a continual process.
Thanks, Marlon. Are you working with the regions at all on, folks are, regions are working on their own transportation plans, and, have they provided any, comment on the CTP and their ability to, access, resources from this effort?
Yeah, so through the development of the CTP 2050, we actually did get comments from not only our regional transportation partners, but a broad array of stakeholders. And so as I mentioned before, we have our policy advisory committee, which was really instrumental in helping us develop the CTP 2050. And so our goal is to continue to work with that group, as well as other groups, as we're looking to implement CTP 2050. And so one of the conversations that we had with the commission staff was, regarding the, with this first iteration of the report, we understand that, much of the actions, were all specific to Caltrans. And we do want to find an opportunity to work with our regional partners to figure out, how we can start working with them, and in an effort to really align all of the work and projects and plans across the state, with the policy direction that's set forth in the CTP 2050. And so I think that's going to be a continued conversation, and very much looking forward to working with the stakeholders.
Well, we look forward to your update and you populating your dashboard. Thanks, Marlon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I believe Commissioner Martinez, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And good to see you, Marlon. Quick question for you in regards to the OCTA letter that was presented to you. I'm not sure if you have been able to respond from Kia, but I know you're calling it the implementation program progress report, but is this intended to fulfill the implementation element commitment? That's the first question. And I know they asked a lot, and they had a lot of other items that they had on there. And so I just wanted to know, one, was there a follow-up? Number two, is this going to fulfill the full implementation plan, or is this just a report and the full plan, it's coming next? And then I have a question in regards to the dashboard.
Okay, so this implementation report, is meant to fulfill the request, for the implementation of the CTP. But again, we really are seeing it as a, as an iterative process. And so, this is just the first of, probably 4 annual reports, and our goal is to, because this is actually, I think, the first time we've actually had a implementation effort, that's been this robust around the CTP 2050. And so, given that this is a policy level document, and while we do have specific actions that are in the report, 132 to be exact, I think there's an opportunity for us to have a much more, broader approach. And so, this will be a continued conversation, but specific to OCTA, and I'm assuming you're referencing their comment letter
yes.
on the implementation report. Yeah, so I'll need to follow up with my team on our response on that. So I can't answer that, but I'm happy to follow up.
No worries, Marlon. And then on the dashboard, is there an example in regards to the specific recommendations as we move towards the feasibility considerations as it pertains to the dashboard? Like, do you have any examples?
So one of the slides in the presentation, that is sort of our kind of the prototype, I guess, of what the dashboard would look like. So, happy to talk a little bit more about that. But I think you're referencing different actions and whether they're feasible or not. Is that the question?
Yes. And how would you be able to articulate that or put that into the dashboard?
Yeah, good question. And actually, I think that's something that we can look at. One of the first steps that we did undertake is start identifying, responsible entities, that would be tied to each one of the actions. And so some of the actions, would be specific to Caltrans, and other actions might include other, other agencies. And so, I can definitely see including some of the pieces that you're talking in terms of feasibility, as far as that goes. We can include a section in the report on that.
Great. And then just finally, Marlon, I think it's like a very important, feedback loops. It was funny, yesterday when I was touring a dairy farm and the data that they're using to streamline agriculture, and they have, everything they have everything that, just by a click on everything that they're doing in regards to whether it's their almond groves, their alfalfa, their dairy. And I was able to see that technology, and it's giving them feedback. So if they're having issues, they immediately can correct those. In government, at times, we definitely move forward towards implementing programs, and sometimes we don't follow back up for years. And we know that the program is not working. And so, especially you all in the engineer field, we know how important feedback loops are to ensuring that something is working. And so I think this dashboard is going to be vital, but what's more important is that how do we know specifically like complete streets? I know that's been a sticking point for a lot of folks. Is California really doing complete streets? Caltrans, are they really doing it? Is it a part of what complete streets is? And so I know we've been at this for quite some time, and there's been great work being done. But do we know, is that the model that we should be moving forward towards? Because I'll tell you, when we look at complete streets, for me, one of the biggest missing components, not just in complete streets, but also CalSTA, we're not talking about localizing food systems, because at the end of the day, when you look at our supply chain, you could go into any grocery store or any restaurant, and what do you see when you enter? I'm seeing all these signs due to the supply chain. I actually went to Subway yesterday because that's all there was in Tulare County when I was on my tour. That's not something that I would typically go to, but as soon as I entered, that's what it said. Due to supply chain issues, we may not have certain items. And so, localizing our food systems into complete streets and or CalSTA are imperative. But these are some of the things that we are not discussing. And so as it pertains to complete streets, some people have said, well, we should have done a broadband, underground utilities, and obviously there's other issues as it pertains to that long ago when we were talking about complete streets. And so my question, I guess, as we move forward, how will this data, this dashboard be able to provide feedback loops on what we're doing when we're implementing certain funding mechanisms and or programs?
Yeah, so you're bringing up some really good questions, and I would say first and foremost, continuous improvement is really important, and and if something seems to be broken, it needs to be fixed, and so within my program, we are implementing processes such as lessons learned and really understanding the products that we're putting out there. Are there opportunities for improvement? And we need to make sure that we're capturing those pieces. And I would say another important factor in this is, as we undertake the planning process, we have our statewide policy documents, that are providing kind of general direction. We have processes throughout our 12 districts where we're identifying and doing different types of analyses as far as those systems go. You had mentioned complete streets. We're doing work in the freight realm. And so we're doing a lot of different analyses, quarter plans, and we really want to make sure that we're, as we're doing that work, there's some intention behind it in regards to what are we trying to achieve. And based off of that, then, we're going to start identifying different improvements to put into our project delivery stream. And that planning process is really critical, because, that is really the foundation in regards to, the things that you're bringing up with the supply chain. If we understand that there's an issue with supply chain or, getting, goods to market, those are the types of things that our planning studies really need to reflect. And assuming we do all that great planning work, now we have a better chance of delivering the right projects that are addressing the right issues. But one important thing is, even when we build these projects, I think it's important, and you mentioned that feedback loop. We have to have some process where, we're actually looking at the system as a whole. We're looking at the projects that we're delivering and really confirming, is it actually meeting the issues that were identified? And then we need to make sure that that feedback loop is going right back into our policy planning and the work that we're continuing to do. So that's kind of, generally speaking, that's how we're thinking about the planning process. And more than happy to make sure that we're including that type of discussion in our future reports.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much, Marlon.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the time.
So I apologize, but we are going to have to take the consent calendar out of order. So Kurtej, you are going to be up for consent right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Eager. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tabs 34 through 50 are action items listed as part of the consent calendar. Please note the changes to tab 41, as 8 uncontested resolutions of necessity were withdrawn prior to this commission meeting. If there are no questions on any of the items from the consent calendar, I will provide staff's recommendation.
Do we have any questions? Do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Staff recommends approval of tabs 34 through 50 on the consent calendar.
Motion to approve, Martinez.
Second.
Second, Tabelloni.
Third.
As long as it's in Italian, I'm fine with it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Martinez?
First was Martinez.
You can give it to Carl.
No, first was.
Yes, so we have Martinez and Tabelloni. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you so much for letting us go out of order. We will go back to tab 19.
Thank you, Chair Eager. Commissioners, tab 19 is an informational item presenting the 2021 Active Transportation Program Benefits Report. which outlines the benefits compiled from the 2021 ATP programmed projects. The Active Transportation Program is a critical component of California's efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by making our transportation system more sustainable. Specifically, the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, or CAPTI, highlights investments in safe and accessible bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, particularly in low-income and disadvantaged communities, as a guiding principle to reduce California's dependence on driving and equitably meeting the state's climate goals. The 2021 Active Transportation Program received a total of 476 applications and selected 113 projects for funding at the March, June, and August 2021 Commission meetings. Some of the outputs from the fifth full cycle of the program include approximately 15 miles of Class 1 bike paths, 26 miles of Class 4 separated bikeways, and nearly 40 miles of new sidewalks throughout California. As reflected in the report, 90 of the funded projects are benefiting disadvantaged communities, and 48 are safe routes to school projects that will directly increase safety for public school students, parents, guardians, and faculty to walk or bike to school. Commission staff used the Strategic Growth Council's Affordable Housing and Sustainable Community Programs Benefits Calculator tool, or the AHSC tool, as an interim method of providing program benefits for the 2021 ATP. The AHSC tool was developed by the California Air Resources Board to estimate greenhouse gas emission reductions and air pollutant reductions of each proposed project component. The tool measured 92 project benefits as they fit the requirements of this tool. These 92 projects consisted of Class 1, Class 2, Class 4 bike facilities, and new pedestrian sidewalks. Based on the outputs from the tool, it is estimated that the 2021 ATP programmed projects will reduce total passenger vehicle miles traveled by over 42 million miles and reduce greenhouse gas emissions by over 14,000 metric tons, which is equivalent to approximately 3,100 passenger vehicles driven for 1 year. Commission staff recognizes the importance of discussing the benefits the program is providing throughout the state. For this reason, we have a few exciting activities that are currently underway. The first is the Active Transportation Program's Benefit Cost Tool. Beginning August 2019, the Active Transportation Resource Center has been working with the UC Davis Institute of Transportation Studies to develop a research-based benefit cost tool for the program. The ATP Benefit Cost Tool provides descriptions and estimates of infrastructure and non-infrastructure bicycle and pedestrian project benefits and benefit cost ratios. Additionally, the UC Berkeley Safe Transportation Research and Education Center, also known as UC Berkeley Safe Trek, will be developing the statewide active transportation count guidance and the count database. The count guidance will provide a standardized guidance for applicants to use when collecting bicycle and pedestrian count data. This will replace the ATP interim count methodology guidance, which was made available to applicants in September of 2019. In addition to the count guidance, UC Berkeley Safe Trek will also develop a GIS database as a one-stop repository for statewide active transportation count data. This will allow users to easily upload, view, map, analyze, and download bicycle and pedestrian count data. The final effort outlined in the report is the Active Transportation Resource Center's Evaluation and Technical Assistance Program, which will assist local agencies, particularly disadvantaged communities, in gathering before and after project data for ATP reporting. The program will develop an evaluation framework, which is a matrix or checklist of active transportation project performance metrics and data collection methods. The Active Transportation Resource Center will create infographics using these data results and will continue creating the ATP project profiles. Commissioners, this benefit report outlines the program benefits for the 92 projects in the 2021 Active Transportation Program. Should additional funding become available in the ATP, the overall program benefits would increase exponentially. With more funding available, the Commission can invest in networks of safe and accessible bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure throughout the state. This increase in safe active transportation facilities will encourage community usage and will also reduce GHG and air pollution emissions from displaced vehicles, decrease community health concerns, and create safer paths for children, adults, and older adults throughout the state of California. Commissioners, this is an informational item presenting the 2021 Active Transportation Program Benefits Report. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And boy, if we needed any more proof on why we need more money, you just gave that to us. So thank you so much. Yes, Commissioner Grisby.
Thank you for the report and for the data. It's very interesting. I'll make a confession. I love cycling, but I'm afraid of these class 2 bike lanes for myself, given how people are driving so aggressively these days. And we've seen data that supports that. Do we know how these different classes perform compared to each other?
So we have noticed in the program that there's been an increase in the different types of bike facilities. So we've noticed more class 4 bike facilities, which are separated bikeways and a lot safer. There are still class 2 bike facilities that are proposed in the active transportation program. However, we are seeing more projects that are creating barriers to create that safer protection for their community members and users.
Are there any ways we can encourage more of those to get bigger benefits?
Yes,
I think you just did.
Yes, we are always encouraging our applicants to implement the best projects that work well for their communities. With that said, safety is a big component of the program, so we are seeing better facilities.
Thank you. Vice Chair Gardino.
Alika, thank you. Excellent report. I am just so glad to see the emphasis on air quality benefits. It's highlighted here as well. So thank you. That data is incredibly important. I'll never know as much as Dr. Liu on these issues, but the data I have seen is so compelling that we have to address it. And I'm glad to see we're measuring it so that we can.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, I'll let Claire and then I can go ahead.
Okay, Commissioner Falcone.
Go ahead, Claire.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Martinez, for yielding. I had a question. Thank you, Alika, for the presentation. Any thought to incorporating, the presence of micromobility, right? So there's a number of private operators up and down the state, and I know that safety is still, it's a nascent industry, and there's regulations that municipalities and governments are placing to make it a more safe activity. But there's a recognition now that it's a viable first and last mile approach to the transportation system. They're part of what they do and how they're trying to legitimize themselves is data sharing. And so my question is, any thought to incorporating, the information that they're gathering, incorporating into, what you're doing here?
Yeah, I think that's a really great suggestion. I think we are always working to improve the program and encompass more program benefits. And so as the report continues, yes, I think that would be a great suggestion for us to look into. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thanks.
Commissioner Martinez.
Thank you, Chairwoman. And you're going to hear a recurring theme from me moving forward, localizing food systems and how it's interconnected with land use and transportation. I think it's imperative for us, as we're going to be making adjustments to adding CalSTA into some of our transportation programs and moving towards, in Europe, they're calling them food trails. And so many various cities have joined up And they've created these food trails, and it's really creating a climate smart, environmentally sustainable food system. But it's focusing on reductions of food miles, right? So when we're talking about active transportation and we want people trying to commit these 15-minute cities, right? We're hearing these conversations, but we don't have this conversation about food, right? Most people are getting in their cars, and I make this joke all the time. Obviously, I'm not going to get in my bike to go to Costco. It just ain't gonna happen, right? I can carry bulk items in my 15-pound bike, and or even sometimes in electric, unless you have a big thing trailer behind you. So it's not gonna happen. And so how can we look at cities that are moving? And one great example is Long Beach. Long Beach has a lot of localized food systems. And that's one of the questions that they asked me when they met with me last week. And they're like, have you ever considered the reduction of food miles? And I was like, you know what? I didn't think about that. It's interesting. I haven't seen it. I haven't heard it. The second thing that they asked was the preservation and creation of green spaces, right? So when we're talking about complete streets, how do we continue? It's not just about parks, but it's pocket parks. It's other, foodscapes and food gardens where community can not just educate, but you're seeing more of that, especially with supply chain issues, what happened with COVID, massive issues with food. And as I mentioned earlier, a majority of the foods that we're producing here in California are being exported out for the rest of the nation and the world. So a lot of these foods don't stay here locally. So what can we do from a localized perspective to ensure that we continue not to create these food deserts? We're in a food desert, which is really funny. A lot of cities in the Central Valley are food deserts. And I'm like, you guys produce most of the foods for the nation in the world. And so that's something for us to consider. And then just lastly is that, and maybe Joe will chime in, because I know the Air Quality Management District, the other big thing and phenomena that we've seen, and there's been legislation, is on the food trucks, right? Legalizing that. But a lot of these food trucks are using propane, they're using generators, so they're emitting greenhouse gas emissions, right? So when we're talking about complete streets, we're talking about food systems, we need to take all of that into consideration. And we're not, as I read CalSTA, as I read, us wanting to focus on climate, food is a big sector that, and I'll read a statement where they're saying that food systems account up for 37% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Cities consume 70% of the world's food supply. And this figure is expected to rise to 80% by 2050. So I just want us to take that into account as we're talking about active transportation and how we're trying to incorporate, some of the goals from CalSTA and climate to think about, giving cities and other regions the opportunities and counties that if they want to expand localized food supplies, that they can do that, because it's tied to climate, it's tied to reducing food, food miles. And so we can do that through active transportation and moving towards creating 15-minute cities so that we could have cleaner air. With that, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Madam
right,
Chair.
it's on you now.
No, it's not a big deal. I would say that I did see a calculation at how many miles the food on your average dinner plate travels to get to you, and it was just crazy. I mean, absolutely crazy, especially here in California, right? I mean, the breadbasket of food growing in the entire United States, the entire world. I have a good friend, Paula Daniels, who's been struggling with this question and working on this issue for many years. And I'm more than happy to introduce you to her and to provide her information to our staff. She is a real expert, really understands this stuff and how to fix these problems. And the last I talked to her, which is probably pre-COVID, she was working on creating multi-county, adjoining county collaboratives in order to reduce the number of miles your food travels to get on your plate. Really, really interesting and fascinating stuff. Lots and lots of benefits, transportation, air quality, climate, and local economy all included.
Any other questions on this item? Okay, you're still up, Alika.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Eager. Commissioners, tab 20 is an informational item presenting the Caltrans Division of Aeronautics proposed 2022 Aeronautics Acquisition and Development Program, also known as the A&D program. Every 2 years, the Division of Aeronautics brings forward the new A&D program. These projects are selected based on the most recently adopted capital improvement plan, which was last recently adopted at the June 2021 meeting, using the Commission's approved priority ranking. The 2022 A&D program, which covers fiscal years 2022, 23, and 2023-24, includes 21 projects valued at $3.3 million. The Division of Aeronautics, in collaboration with Commission staff, is working on updating the priority ranking list to include a new category that addresses climate change and greenhouse gas emissions. Once it goes through the regulatory process, the proposed priority ranking list will be amended and brought forward to the Commission for approval. The revised priority ranking list will be used for the development of the 2024 Acquisition and Development Program. Commissioners, this is an informational item and will return at the Commission's June 2022 meeting for adoption.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioners.
So Gertej, you are up on item 22.
Thank you, Chair Eager. Tab 22 is an action item to approve Caltrans' wireless program master license agreement as part of their airspace lease program. The master license agreement is being amended to update the annual base license fee matrix. Per discussions Caltrans has had with leading wireless companies in the telecommunications industry, the prior base fee rate of 3.5% was outdated, and the new 2.5% rate now being proposed is more in line with industry standards. No Commission resolution update is needed due to the typical administrative nature of the proposed fee matrix change. Therefore, staff recommends your approval of tab 22.
Motion to approve, Martinez.
Do we have public comment?
We do not have public comment at this time.
Okay, then we have a motion to approve. Martinez, do we have a second? Second, Commissioner Liu. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Monica, item 23.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Item tab 23 is an information item for the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program that provides the status of the project delivery and project milestones for the period of July 2021 through December 2021. A total of 73 TRC projects have been awarded. Of the 73 awarded projects, 11 projects have been completed, 9 from Cycle 1, 1 from Cycle 2, and 1 from Cycle 3. For the 11 closed projects, we have asked the department for an analysis of the benefits of the project anticipated at programming and the benefits actually achieved. The department shared that they will need to coordinate with CalSTA and the California Air Resources Board to gather the information. We will continue to work with the department so that the information can be included in the next semi-annual report that is scheduled to be presented at the October 22nd Commission meeting. This is an information item. No action is needed.
Do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Thank you. Any commissioners' questions? Okay, thank you so much. Then I will turn it back over to Gertej for the information calendar.
Commissioners, tabs 24 through 33 are information items that have been reviewed and found to have no issues raised by Commission staff. Therefore, individual items will not be presented unless specifically requested by a commissioner. If there are no questions or comments, that will conclude the presentation of the information calendar.
Any public comment?
I see no public comment at this time.
Any questions, comments from the commissioners? Then we're moving on. You're off the hook. And we already did the consent calendar, so we will move to environmental matters. Jose.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and members of the public. Item 51 is an action item. This is a mitigated negative declaration for the Oakland Alameda Access Project. Caltrans adopted a statement of overriding considerations, finding that the benefits outweigh the impacts. Staff recommends your approval.
Move it, Tabellone.
Do we have any public comment?
I see none at this time. Thank you.
And I will entertain a second. Any commissioner questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 52.
Item 52 is an action item. This is the final EIR for the El Camino Real roadway renewal project. Caltrans adopted a statement of overriding considerations, finding that the benefits outweigh the impacts. Staff recommends your approval.
Motion by Guardino.
Any public comment?
I see no public comment at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Tabellone.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Tab 53.
Item 53 is an action item. This is the final EIR for the Goleta Train Depot project. The Goleta City Council determined that environmental impacts could be reduced to less than significant levels. Staff recommends your approval.
Any public comment? I'm going to get that in there real
None at
fast.
this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Second, Grisby.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Liu, second by Commissioner Grisby. Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. 54.
Item 54 is an action item. This is the final EIR for the Elk Grove Station project. The Board of Commissioners of the San Joaquin Regional Rail Commission adopted a statement of overriding considerations, finding that the benefits outweigh the impacts. Staff recommends your approval.
Any public comment?
None at this time. Thank you.
Any questions?
Motion to approve Martinez?
Second, Falcone.
Second by Commissioner Falcone. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much. We will move on to the right-of-way matters. Gertej?
Thank you. Commissioners, tab 55 is a request for Caltrans to directly negotiate an airspace lease with a private entity known as N Avenue Apartments, LP. N Avenue Apartments has been a tenant of the state since 1992, as they own and operate the apartment building on the adjoining property. As part of the request to directly negotiate a new airspace lease term with Caltrans, N Avenue Apartments are also proposing to expand their current lease area on both ends of the parcel. This additional area will provide N Avenue Apartments with oversight authority to eliminate fires, assaults, drug use, and damage to irrigation lines that have occurred as a result of people sheltering within this part of state right-of-way. It's expected that N Avenue Apartments and Caltrans will work with social service providers who are trained and funded to conduct outreach and offer housing options to the people experiencing homelessness in this particular part of the state right-of-way. According to Streets and Highways Code, section 104.12, requests to directly negotiate an airspace lease require a unanimous vote of the commission from the commissioners present at the meeting. With that said, commissioners, staff has reviewed tab 55 and recommends approval.
Do we have any public comment?
I see none at this time. Thank you.
Do we have any commissioner questions? Then I will entertain a motion.
Falcone moves.
Second, Tabellone.
Or that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Skip 56. Okay, then we will continue. Lori, we will take item 57.
Okay, Commissioners, tab 57 is an action item to adopt the active transportation program policy on user counts. The policy itself is attachment B to the book item. So Alika just gave a presentation on the 2021 active transportation program benefits report. As part of her presentation, Alika discussed that the Commission and Caltrans are pursuing various methods for assessing the performance of active transportation projects individually and the program as a whole. Some of these, such as the Active Transportation Benefit Cost Tool, are sophisticated programs that require years of development to get to a usable product. There is one performance metric, however, that we have now and have had since the program started. That is user counts. User counts are just what it says. User counts measure the increase in active transportation use before and after a project is completed. User counts are probably the most direct method for assessing a project, and then as you roll them up, the program's progress towards achieving the statutory goal of increasing walking and biking. The Active Transportation Program has always required implementing agencies to collect before and after user count data as part of the project reporting process. But there have been challenges in collecting this data. The main one is that there wasn't any consistent methodology and guidance for conducting counts to help the reporting agencies to know what they should be doing and to ensure that we are getting valid data. To address this problem, the Active Transportation Program Technical Advisory Committee developed the interim count methodology guidance for the HEP in September of 2019. This methodology, the methodology described in the guidance, applied to any project getting a construction allocation in October 2019 or later. This document guides agencies on topics like the different kinds of count methods that can be used, such as manual counts, video counts, and automated technologies, and when and where to conduct counts. This comprehensive document was key to ensuring valid count data. And I do have to recognize Gary Gutierrez of Caltrans because he really spearheaded this effort, and it was really key to the program. However, not long after the count guidance was finalized, the pandemic hit and agencies throughout the state were struggling to do even their most critical work, let alone getting out there to do their user counts when they were supposed to. Many agencies started asking for extensions to conducting their user counts, which were granted. Because of these factors, we have very few final delivery reports with count data that use the interim count methodology. And unfortunately, some of these that we do have were submitted with incomplete data. So to get everyone back on track with reporting user counts, Commission staff developed the Active Transportation Program policy on user counts, which is attachment B of the book item. This policy does the following. It states that agencies will no longer be granted user count extensions after this commission meeting, and those agencies that were granted COVID-19 extensions must complete after construction user counts by June 30th, 2023. The policy also reiterates the consequences of non-reporting that are already adopted in the SB1 accountability and transparency guidelines and requires implementing agencies must submit a narrative with after construction user counts. And the policy makes it clear that projects receiving a construction phase allocation at or after this commission meeting must comply with the count methodology and procedures outlined in the interim guidance. For any agencies that may still be unsure of how to conduct user counts, there's various guidance on the Caltrans Local Assistance Active Transportation Program page, and the Active Transportation Resource Center is having a teleconference called Conducting ATP Project Counts, Refreshers and Reminders on May 25th at 9:30. So, and just to say, to address one of the questions that Commissioner Grisby had before, user counts is one way that we could see the difference in usage between the different types of facilities, such as class 2 facilities versus class 4, those kinds of things. So with that, I can take any questions. If not, staff recommends approval of the Active Transportation Program policy on user counts as shown on attachment B of tab 57.
Do we have any public comment?
I see no public comment at this time.
Vice Chair Gardino?
Thank you, Chair Eager, and Lori and Alika, excellent job on this. As I read it, and perhaps I missed it, well, let me back up. I completely concur with what you're recommending here and will be delighted to make a motion to support it. As I read it though, it wasn't clear to me how we will communicate with our stakeholders whose user counts will be due. I was pleased to see we're giving 13 months. I think that's a lot of grace coming out of the pandemic, so plenty of time to do it. But are we capturing just how we will communicate?
Well, we can work with Caltrans. The reporting comes through Caltrans. So we'll work with Caltrans to make sure we can send out probably like an email blast to all of the implementing agencies, making sure that they're aware of the policy and that when their user counts are due.
Would you mind if I hate trying to edit from the podium, but might we add a sentence somewhere that clarifies that through Caltrans and/or CTC, we will ensure to inform all impacted agency partners in writing or electronically or some form of communication so that we have communicated effectively?
Yes.
Is that your friendly amendment to the recommendation?
If that meets with others' approval as well. I just would hate for someone to 13 months from now say no one ever contacted me or contacted the right person.
I find it hard to believe that every city and county is not watching our commission meeting.
It's shocking to me too, but they might not be.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Liu.
Okay, I'm going to speak on Commissioner Crispy's behalf because Alika did provide an answer to his question, but Lori, I don't think you were characterizing the question he asked, which was an absolutely very interesting and important question, which is what is the difference of the safety of class 1, 2, and 4 bicycle lanes? Because we can just tell that when you're riding on a 2, you don't feel as safe as when you're riding on a 4 or even a 1. So that question is what I believe that the Commissioner Grisby asked. And that is a question that I don't know if there are data or an analysis of that, but if we could maybe look into it and report back, that would be really helpful.
So yes, thank you. I was addressing more usage, but safety is also another very important metric. But I think that the active transportation benefit cost model will have a way to at least somewhat measure the difference in safety between the different classes of bike lanes.
And if I could just add, that it's a very thorough application, and one of the things it asks, and it's not just what class you're putting in, but how much traffic is on the road. Because on my bike to work, often I take a very low trafficked route, which only has a class 3 Shero because nobody's on it. So there are trade-offs, and that's what's done in the evaluation process. It's not just black and white, because there are plenty. And I sent you that picture of the class 1 facility. This was in Utah, not our fault, right on a 65-mile-an-hour road that's just separated by some bollards. It did not feel safe. I don't know how safe it was, but it didn't feel safe. To get to the basic answer of your question, there's a lot more detail in the application that allows the evaluation of it.
Thank you. And I'm sure they're all trying to shame me because I don't ride a bike or run or swim or anything. But it is important information that we all need to know. Yes.
So, Chair Eager, I just want to be clear then. So then staff is recommending the approval of the policy with the addition of the phrase that Commissioner Gardino
That's correct.
So I will make that motion that we approve the recommendation with a staff provided edit that captures that we will do all that we can to notify in some form of written communication applicants of the deadline.
Thank you.
Second.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Lori. Hannah, Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee appointment, item 58.
Yes, thank you. So Susan Ornelas, who represented local government on the Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee and was the former mayor of Arcata in Humboldt County, has retired, and staff would like to thank her for the time that she spent on the committee. And the chair of the commission, in consultation with the secretary of the California State Transportation Agency, have nominated Stacy Atkins Salazar to replace Susan on the TAC. Stacy is the mayor of Arcata. She has about 20 years of experience as a businesswoman in that city, and she serves on various boards and work groups. And so staff are looking forward to working with her on the road charge TAC.
Thank you for that informational item, Hannah. Anyone have any questions? Do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Thank you so much. And we will continue moving forward. We're going to move on to item 59. Cortez?
Commissioners, tab 59 is an action item for a post-fact time extension of 2 shop projects. The request for a post-fact time extension is being made as an exception to shop guidelines. Please also note there is one other tab towards the end of the agenda, tab 119, that will be requesting post-fact time extensions as well. Additionally, staff has heard that there will be more post-fact time extension requests coming to the June commission meeting. Prior to providing a recommendation, commission staff would like to call on Caltrans to provide clarity on the post-fact time extensions requested for this item. Specifically, staff would like to gain an understanding as to what caused these post-facts, what is being done to prevent future post-fact situations from occurring, and who is the responsible party for ensuring compliance with the timely use of funds policies per shop guidelines. I understand that Caltrans District 7 is in attendance and will be able to provide answers to these questions. If the District 7 representative can please come to the podium.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chair Eager, Executive Director Mitch Weiss, and Stephen Keck, Caltrans Acting Director. I take these post-facts extremely seriously. It's an issue that was raised to my attention recently, and when it was raised to my attention, I took some very swift action in actually bringing in new leadership into the program project management area of District 7. And I was able to bring on Ms. Susan Chang, who is now our Deputy Director for Program Project Management. And as she's come on board, she and I have been identifying some additional gaps in some of our processes and our system, and we are closing those gaps. A couple of ways we are closing them. We've also asked our headquarters team and colleagues to do another assessment to put another set of eyes on our processes. And in doing so, I think we do have a few additional post-facts that will come potentially in June or August. And after that, I believe that will be the end of it. We have closed those gaps. We've done a very broad and robust training with all of our team, over 200 of our project management team and capital outlay support team were trained on the shop guidelines, timely use of funds, and all the project delivery processes. We will continue to do this ongoing training, continue to do more evaluations, and we are now doing a very deep dive on all of our projects, existing and those that are planned in future coming forward, looking at them, looking at the use of funds, looking at the allocations, looking at all phases of the project delivery process so that we do not continue to have this type of situation occur.
Thank you, Tony. Do we have any questions from the dais? No. Do we have any public comment?
No public comment at this time. Thank you.
Tim has a question.
Yeah. I don't have a button to press or anything. I was just curious, does Caltrans have any indication of the number of post-fact time extensions that'll be coming in June?
Right now, as of today, my understanding, there's 2 or 3.
Thank you.
And Chair, Madam Chair, if I could,
Yes, Commissioner Liu?
Director Tavares, I know this might not be possible, but certainly one way to avoid it in the future, and I know that your employees are represented, so you probably have to do that through negotiation, but shouldn't their personnel review criteria include whether or not they are actually fulfilling those responsibilities? And I mean, I know this is a management issue for you, and I applaud you for actually identifying the problem and dealing with it. But I mean, as you know, it makes things awkward when we have to come up here and do this. So is there any way to kind of increase the accountability for staff so that it doesn't happen again?
Yes, Commissioner Liu, that's an excellent question. And part of our evaluation with our staff and employees is doing an ongoing performance review. And we also lay out expectations every first of the calendar year, expectations with all of our employees. They sign the expectation memo. Part of our program project management team review also will be reviewing with project managers and the entire team there on their projects, where they are in the process, and are they meeting the guidelines, and that is an expectation.
Any other questions? Yes.
No question, but a comment. And so what you saw here was a cluster of these from a single district. And one thing I don't think Caltrans directly addressed, one of the questions that Tim brought up, was who's ultimately responsible for this. And as you've seen today, each district director holds that responsibility and of course manages that responsibility. Tony, thank you very much for going out of the way, right? Once we discovered, hey, we have a few, what's going on, to not just try to fix that problem, but to identify the full universe of that and address it all head on, as you mentioned, Commissioner Liu. So Tony's up here now. All the rest of the district directors are watching this. And so I wanted to take the opportunity to say those words. Thank you.
So everybody else, watch what's happening here. Any other questions? Then I will entertain a motion to accept
Motion
the
to approve
recommendation.
Martinez?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Okay, we can do another one. Tim, we are on item 60.
Thank you, Chair Eager. Commissioners, tab 60 is an action item for a safety improvement project in Santa Barbara County that is requesting an initial allocation that exceeds the program amount by more than 20% for construction capital. Please note there's a technical correction as identified on the change list. The construction capital is programmed for $8,888,000, and Caltrans is requesting $12,285,000 in construction capital and $2.604 million in construction support. The construction capital estimate is greater than the program amount due to the increased scope and cost of electrical and traffic control items after a refinement during the plan specifications and estimate phase. Per shop guidelines, Caltrans cannot change the funding amount once the project is in the year of delivery. Costs of items related to electrical work have significantly increased due to that time, due to supply chain and labor shortages. This is the first opportunity for Caltrans to adjust the construction capital due to the increased costs. Staff has reviewed the project and the request and recommends approval for this item.
Any public comment?
No public comment.
Any questions from the commissioners? I'll entertain a motion. Moved by Commissioner Liu.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Falcone. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. 61.
Commissioners, item 61 is an action item for the permanent restoration project on US 101 in Mendocino County that is requesting a supplemental allocation for pre-construction support of $250,000 for the plans, specifications, and estimate phase. The project realized cost increases for the PS&E phase due to the redesign of the retaining wall associated with change in site conditions. In April of 2021, Caltrans discovered that a vertical sag was present on the roadway due to a larger landslide outside the project limits. This caused the need to redesign the retaining wall. And in addition to that, the original retaining wall layout required a temporary closure of the southbound lanes. To eliminate the need for the lane closures and to provide additional room for construction, it was decided to move the retaining wall further away from the roadway. The supplemental funds will be utilized to finish the design and for all activities to award the project. Staff has reviewed the project and the request and recommends approval of this item.
Public comment?
No public comment at this time.
Questions? Motion? I'm just saying one word now.
Motion to approve, Martinez.
Do I have a second? Second, Lou. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. 62.
Commissioners, item 62 is an action item for the permanent restoration project on I-5 in Tehama County that is requesting a supplemental allocation for pre-construction support of $350,000 for the plan specification and estimate phase, or PS&E phase. The project realized cost increases for the PS&E phase due to the need to add features to the facility to enhance security between the officers and the truck drivers at the request of CHP. In addition, a number of other modifications to the design were made at the request of the CHP and to meet the updated CHP facility design guidelines. The supplemental funds are needed to finalize the design and for all activities to award the project. Staff has reviewed the project and the request and recommends approval for this item.
No public comment.
Any questions? I'll entertain a motion. You have to do it again.
Second, Grisby.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Liu, second by Commissioner Grisby. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 63.
Commissioners, item 63 is an action item for the road preservation project on State Route 29 in Solano County that is requesting a supplemental allocation for pre-construction support of $910,000 for the project report and environmental document phase, otherwise known as P&ED. This project realized cost increases for the environmental phase after allocation due to the additional complete streets elements that were incorporated into the project as part of the 2020 SHOP Complete Streets reservation efforts. Due to the phase being allocated at that time, funding could not be added to the phase without a supplemental allocation request. Some of the new complete streets scope that was added to the project include 1.2 miles of new sidewalk, 2 miles of Class 2 bikeways, 3.6 miles of Class 4 bikeways, and 1.8 miles of lane reduction. Additional funding is necessary due to the expanded environmental analysis, additional land surveys, continued coordination with the city, and to perform preliminary design of the complete streets elements. CTC staff has been working with Caltrans to better understand the request, and it has been recently identified that the original amount of the additional resources anticipated for the environmental phase was $450,000. The project is now requesting $910,000. Caltrans has stated the increase from what was originally anticipated is related to the need for more land surveys than was originally anticipated and the need to utilize consultant services to complete the environmental phase. After reviewing the project and the request, and after receiving this additional clarity from Caltrans, staff recommends approval for this item.
Do you have any public comment?
None at this time.
Any questions from commissioners?
Second, Grisby.
So we had a motion by Commissioner Liu, second by Commissioner Grisby. Is that correct? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. 64.
Commissioners, item 64 is an action item for a safety enhancement project on various routes in Los Angeles and Ventura counties that is requesting a supplemental allocation for construction capital of $2.345 million to re-advertise the project. This project was advertised in October of 2021 with a bid opening in November of 21. The project received 4 bids, of which the 3 eligible bidders ranged from 144% to 161% over the engineer's estimate. Reasons given for their high bids were supply and unit price fluctuations of steel, aluminum, and pressure-treated wood. In addition to the high bids, Caltrans also found a discrepancy in the construction area signs bid item. For these reasons, Caltrans has decided to reject all bids and re-advertise the project. Staff has reviewed the project and the request and recommends approval for this item.
Have any public comment?
None at this time. Thank you.
Have any commissioner questions? Commissioner Liu, do you have one? I see it on your face. Oh. Do I have a second?
Second, Martinez?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 65.
Commissioners, agenda item 65 is an action item. This is a supplemental funds allocation request for contract award. This request is for the San Benito State Route 156 improvement project. This project will convert a 2-lane conventional highway into a 4-lane expressway between the city of San Juan Bautista and Hollister. This project includes new bridges, elimination of at-grade crossings, intersection modifications, road rehabilitation, and bicycle lanes. The department is requesting a $14.7 million of supplemental funds for the construction capital phase to award the project. This project was allocated in December 2020, and in January 2022, the project was advertised. Bids were open on March 2022. The project received 6 bids, and the lowest bid was 30% above the engineer's estimate. The 5 remaining bids range in cost from 30.6% to 44.7% over the engineer's estimate. The engineer's estimate was prepared in December, and from December to when the bids were open in March, there was a significant increase in fuel cost and materials cost, which were the primary factors leading to the higher prices reflected on the bids. Staff has reviewed this request and agrees with the department that rebidding the project is most likely not going to achieve lower bids, given the number of bidders that were received for this project and the current economic environment. Staff recommends approval of this supplemental funds request.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment?
No public comment at this time.
Okay, Vice Chair Gardino.
Thank you. And while I will make a motion to support, this is obviously quite an increase from what the engineer's estimate was and the bids that came in, and perhaps we can hear from the district director on this either today or
Tim is here. Yes.
as Tim comes forward. I've driven on this road. It does need to have this change for safety and other reasons. So I support it. I will support it, but I'd like to better understand how the engineer's estimate could be so off with the market, and if there are lessons learned in this regard. And welcome, Tim.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair, thank you, Chair, Commissions. Tim Gubbins, I'm the Caltrans District 5 Director over the Central Coast. So yes, as you heard, the engineer's estimate was done back in December before the bid. We do our best to anticipate the increases that come. The raw material costs, I think we've seen a lot of increases in the last year. We anticipated, or we tried to accommodate everything we had seen during the pandemic. We had a couple big spikes there with the supply chain. But unfortunately, the cost of some of, especially these raw materials, the concrete pavement and the steel we need in the pavement, those material costs were going up between 30 and 40% on a very large number of jobs. And so we worked very hard once we got the bids and we saw where those differences were. We worked very hard to make sure that these were really truly representative of what the market is. And as you heard from your staff, there were 6 bids. The first 2 were very close, but then all six of the bids, they range from 30.3 up to 44.7% above. So we tried our best to accommodate it, some of the situations that have happened in the world in February and March and everything else that caused some of those further supply chains has contributed a lot to this with the concrete and steel. But there's also the labor shortages that some of the contractors are telling us about.
And by the way, I agree with everything you just said. My point was, since we know this is the environment we're living in, as you work with your engineers on their estimates, taking that into account.
Thank you. We are taking that into account, and not to jeopardize anything that just happened a few items before, but we tried to get it on the first time. So item 60 that you just had, we requested another substantial increase at the time of initial vote because our estimate had gone up that much. So we're trying to keep abreast of all the changes and anticipate everything we can.
Tim, thank you. And again, I will make a motion that we approve this important project and the additional allocation.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second by Grigsby.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll try one more, Tim. Let's try for 66.
Thank you, Chair Eager. Commissioners, item 66 is an action item for a safety improvement project on State Route 49 in Placer County, requesting a supplemental allocation for construction capital of $2.276 million to award the project. The project was advertised in November of 21 with the bid opening in January of 22. The contract received 4 bids, of which the lowest eligible bidder was 42% above the engineer's estimate. 3 bidders were contacted, and common themes related to their higher bids were risks related to utility relocation during construction, restrictions on the number of working days, and a slower production rate of work needed due to short shifts and staged work. In addition, contractors stated their bid prices reflected pressures related to supply chain issues, labor shortages, a higher disadvantaged business goal, and material price volatilities. Caltrans has determined the requested supplemental funds are in the best interest of the state to avoid delays in implementing this important safety improvement project and to avoid extra costs to the department. Staff has reviewed the project and the request and recommends approval for this item.
Seeing no public comment at this time.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? I'll entertain a motion. Oh,
Mitch, that we asked him to solve the supply chain crisis about 9 months ago.
We did.
Just a reminder, when I was at the ACT Expo a couple of weeks ago, some of the reasons we don't have zero emission heavy duty trucks on the road is because not only is there a chip shortage, which persists, but they had a shortage of transmission dipsticks, which prevented them from being able to deliver trucks. So, and they say they have no idea what the next shortage is going to be. So Mitch, you really just need to get on it. I'll move the item.
It will be on his review for the next one. Do we have a motion by Commissioner Liu? Do I have a second?
Need a second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And I think we're going to end here because we have a party to go to and we have priorities. So we will end and we'll start tomorrow morning with item number 67. 56. I thought that can't go till after 10. Haha. That's why I'm chair and you're not. So thank you all for a great day, and we will see you tonight at Fresno State and then again tomorrow. Thank you. Wait. We have one more item. I'm sorry, Commissioner, Vice Chair Gardino. Excuse me. Oh. Okay. Vice Chair Gardino.
Thank you, Chair Eager and Commissioners, staff, and stakeholders. We think as a commission, it would be appropriate to adjourn today in the memory of Secretary of Transportation, Norman Y. Mineta, who passed away recently at 90 years old. I think many of us know that Secretary Mineta lived a life of distinction in serving our nation, our state, and his community. You may not know that he was the mayor of San Jose, the first elected mayor. He was a member of Congress for 20 years. He chaired the Transportation Committee and worked in a bipartisan way when he was both ranking member and chair, very successfully for the betterment of our country. He served the Clinton administration as Secretary of Commerce, the George W. Bush administration as Secretary of Transportation, including the challenging times facing our nation and world after 9/11. He received his business degree from UC Berkeley and lived an incredible life of service to others. But what you may not know is he lived a life where he turned bitter into better. His parents were not allowed to become United States citizens, even though they repeatedly tried, because at that time our country had an Asian Exclusion Act. When he was a little boy, he and his family had all their property confiscated in San Jose and was interned at the ironically named Hart Mountain in Cody, Wyoming, with other Japanese Americans. They took away his baseball bat because they said it was a weapon. But it built a lifelong friendship in Wyoming with another distinguished leader that you may recognize, Alan Simpson, who is also a young man. And he would come with his Boy Scout troop to Hart Mountain and meet with Norman Mineta as a little boy, wearing his Cub Scout uniform as well. And they found ways to work together throughout their lives, as we should. So it would be a profound honor if you would join me in a moment of silence as we adjourn today's meeting in the memory of Secretary Norman Y. Mineta. Thank you all.
Thank you all for staying. We appreciate it. With that, we are adjourned.
So beautiful.